Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto was an ancestor in Harry Potter. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Kirallie and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. Harry sat slumped against the cold, rather slimy stone wall, letting his head thump against it in a random rhythm without caring about the pain it caused. And to think the summer had started out oh so normally too. That should have warned him. But the express had been on time, his family had been waiting impatiently on the other side of the barrier, and Dudley had given him his usual welcome home beating after his things had been locked in the cupboard under the stairs. For 2 weeks everything had been depressingly normal at Privet Drive, the order's warning had made no difference, especially after no one showed up to investigate after the first 2 beatings. But everything had changed on August 18th. Aunt Petunia had sent him to the shops for milk, a bit unusual but not unheard of. The house being nothing more than a smoking crater when he returned was very unusual though. Luckily he had managed to keep his wand hidden on himself at all times and had sent Hedwig to Lupin for the summer, so she was safe and he was armed. What forced him into immediate action was the sight of the dark mark floating above the remains of his childhood home. Harry had run for several blocks before summoning the night bus and fleeing to Diagon Alley, Gringotts specifically. One thing he had learned since entering the wizarding world, if it were at all even remotely possible, then Fudge would blame what had happened on Harry and the press, and then the public would back him. The goblins had been very helpful once they realized he was heir to not only the Potter family, but through Sirius the Black as well. He'd emptied the accounts to keep the ministry from freezing them and exchanged portions for various currencies since he wasn't sure where he would end up and then done some much needed shopping while in disguise. After all, he no longer had any possessions thanks to Voldy and his men. After posting a few goodbye letters he had then taken the goblin-provided portkey to the middle of nowhere. See, it turned out that Petunia wasn't the sole remaining family he had had on his mother's side. Turned out he had a second cousin several years older than him living in a hidden village. Apparently his grandmother had once lived there too, but had left for some reason. Her brother however had remained, married and had a son. The problem with all of this? Not even the goblins knew exactly where these villages were leading to him landing in the middle of nowhere flat on his rear. And of course his luck held true. He was pretty sure he was now in one of the hidden villages, but the dungeons had not been a part of the plan. Unfortunately he had landed in an extremely paranoid and militaristic area, which had led to his current predicament of being in a cold cell. At least he wasn't chained to the wall or anything. If all the villages were like this, it was no wonder his grandmother had moved to England. Harry slumped, feigning unconsciousness as the door to his cell was opened and another person dragged in and then, by the sound of it, chained to the wall. He waited until the door had been relocked before moving over to his new cellmate. The man was dressed similarly to the others Harry had seen, but his headband thing appeared to have a very stylized leaf on its metal part instead of the musical note he'd seen on the others. Harry carefully checked the man for injuries, tearing up his own shirt for bandages. Was everyone here odd looking? Though he figured he really couldn't comment considering some of the things he'd seen since entering his parents' world. After making the man as comfortable as he could, Harry returned to his side of the cell, curled up and let himself drift off to sleep while trying to keep an ear out for the guards. The first thing Kakashi noticed upon waking was that he wasn't alone. He remained still, imitating unconsciousness perfectly, listening to the others breathing until he realized his companion appeared to be asleep. He opened his eyes slowly, confirming visually that the other was actually asleep. Apparently he was chained to the wall in a cell with another male who wasn't chained up. So either the guards didn't consider him a threat or he was a more willing guest than Kakashi. He frowned as he noticed the odd scars on the male's back. He'd been whipped by something in the past. It was then that he realized his wounds had been bound by his companion's shirt. Staring at the messy dark hair he couldn't help but wonder, even if it was unlikely. Sasuke? He questioned softly and tried to sit up better only to groan in pain. He felt his vision fade and then gentle hands were on him, rechecking his wounds. He blinked and found himself staring into concerned emerald eyes, not Sasuke then. "You're hurt bad. Moving isn't good idea." Kakashi blinked as the boy, because there was no way he was older than 15. "Kakashi. Thank you." He moved his arm to indicate the bandage and received a shy smile in return. "You're an outsider." Harry gave him a confused look, obviously not understanding outsider. "Not from the villages." "Where do you come from?" He saw understanding light in Harry's eyes. "England, from England. Long way." Kakashi nodded, that would explain why he wasn't chained. An outsider wouldn't be considered a threat by most shinobi. But what was Harry doing here? The boy looked in good enough condition that he couldn't have been here too long. He was thin, yes, but it didn't appear to be a new development. Also he was moving well and didn't appear injured at all, so he doubted Harry has been questioned or anything. But could he trust Harry to try and escape with him? Sooner or later someone would come for him, he knew how badly Orochimaru wanted the Sharingan, and even his single one would be a great advantage to the man. Have you been hurt? Kakashi kept his words and sentences simple so that hopefully Harry would understand. No. Left alone. Food one stay. When? Soon. Two men. One watches other place food. Kakashi nodded, so they weren't so complacent as to think the boy utterly harmless escape. Kakashi's gaze jerked back to Harry who grinned. He smiled behind his mask, so the guards weren't the only ones underestimating the teenager, he was guilty as well. Looking into green eyes, Kakashi realized that while he may not be a killer the teen was no innocent, there was pain and knowledge there that only came with experience and loss. Kakashi nodded in answer to Harry's question, and the teen moved closer to examine the chains with a frown of concentration. Wait a few days. Injuries need time, heal. Harry stated as he studied the locks. Kakashi nodded, knowing that they would stand a better chance if he were able to heal some. Harry was so engrossed in his work and Kakashi in enough pain that their first clue to the guard's presence was Harry being flung into the opposite wall by one of said guards. Kakashi saw Harry's eyes widen in shock and pain as he slammed into the unforgiving stone before he slumped bonelessly to the floor. We better chain the kid up. The guard commented flippantly. Told you so. His partner stated from the doorway. Better not have hurt him too badly, they want to question him later. He'll live. Which is more than I can say for you, copy Nin. Orochimaru has decided you're too dangerous to leave alive. With that the guard pulled a kunai and moved closer so that he could slit Kakashi's throat. Kakashi stared at him, knowing that he was about to die and that there was nothing that could be done about it. A half-shouted warning came far too late and the guard crumpled, dropping the kunai. Kakashi stared at Harry as the teen got shakily to his feet, eyes locked with the remaining guard. Either Harry had regained conscious very quickly or he had been faking the entire time. Kakashi didn't know what he'd done to the guard, but he hadn't felt any chakra being used. He yelled a warning as the remaining guard hurled a kunai at Harry, but even obviously exhausted the teen managed to dodge it rather gracefully. Harry called out something and flung his hand out towards the guard. The man tried to dodge, but Harry was too close, having dodged towards him rather than putting more distance between them. The red light slammed into the guard, lifting him off his feet slightly before he crumpled like his companion had. A second thud had Kakashi turning his attention back to Harry, only to see him half collapsed on the floor, gulping for air. Harry? Green eyes clouded by pain, slowly rose to meet his. Too much. Harry gasped and Kakashi nodded in understanding. Harry's actions of the last few minutes had made up his mind for him, he was taking the team back to Konoha with him. Harry hadn't needed to save him, obviously at great risk to himself, and the last thing they needed was for Orochimaru to learn whatever it was the teen had done. We need to move, Harry. You have to get up. Kakashi urged and Harry blinked blearily before staggering to his feet and back over to Kakashi. But then he changed direction, going to the first man he had taken down and studying him. Need for chains? Harry asked, exhaustion evident in his voice and stance. Ouch on his hip. Harry nodded and gingerly knelt, keeping a wary eye on the unconscious guard. So there was no guarantee how long the men would remain unconscious or the teen wouldn't be so cautious. Harry searched carefully before coming up with the keys. He fumbled with the chains a few times before the locks clicked open. Kakashi used the wall to help himself stand, feeling his chakra returning to him. The chains had been designed to suppress it and keep him weak. He looked at both guards and then at Harry. Put his clothes on. Kakashi pointed at the door guard since he was the shortest of the two, and Harry frowned before nodding in understanding. Kakashi stripped the other guard and dressed in his uniform, glad to be rid of his own torn and stained clothes. He chained the man to the wall in his place before killing him. He turned to see Harry staring at him before the teen nodded and shot him a small but understanding smile. He understood why Kakashi had killed the guard. Harry blushed slightly and held up a bundle of cloth. Help. Kakashi grinned. Harry's clothes were very different from what Shinobi wore. He helped the teen to dress. Hiding his concern over how thin the boy was but worried him the most at the moment was how Harry was moving and how pale he was. Not that he was in the best condition himself, it would have been better if they had had a few days for Kakashi to heal before attempting this, but there was no knowing when the two men would be missed. He quickly killed the remaining guard and moved him over to where Harry had been sleeping. It wouldn't fool anyone for long, but hopefully it would give them a head start. Do what I do and don't talk. Can you do it? Harry gave him a tired grin. No choice. Harry closed his eyes and took a deep breath before opening them again, suddenly standing straighter and looking quite a bit less pale. Obviously he had tapped some sort of reserve and Kakashi knew that sort of thing never lasted long, so he started down the corridor. There were a few times when Kakashi would have sworn they were caught, but every time Harry would grab onto him, close his eyes, whisper something in what Kakashi assumed was his native language, and they would be overlooked. One time Kabuto stared straight at them before walking away as if there was no one there. Once out of the village, Kakashi took a good hold of Harry's arm and began to run, pulling the teen along since he didn't have the strength to carry him yet. They managed just over an hour before Kakashi found himself pulling dead weight. Harry had passed out, white as a ghost and sweating heavily. Kakashi dropped his arm and quickly checked his vitals. He would have preferred to be further from sound before stopping, but now there was no choice. Harry was out cold and showed no signs of waking anytime soon. Kakashi was actually surprised the teenager had lasted as long as he had, but he had seen the muscles when he'd helped him dress. He may be thin, but he wasn't unfit. He worked quickly to set up a very basic camp and used the various things he had found on the guards to set up traps and alarms so they would have some warning and defense if found, doing his best to hide the evidence of their presence. DBC. Chapter 2. Harry lay still, unsure of where he was or what had woken him. All he knew was that he was outdoors and that he was not alone. Harry. He relaxed and opened his eyes as he recognized Kakashi's voice, blinking sleepily at the older man. He was still tired but no longer exhausted, his magical core had recharged itself somewhat while he slept. Harry pushed himself into a sitting position and smiled at Kakashi. Where? Only an hour's run from sound. Kakashi informed him. Ca and you go on now. Harry nodded and then tilted his head, thinking while studying his companion. The language barrier was dangerous in their current situation, but would Kakashi let him? Try something. Need more language. Harry stumbled for the right words, frustrated. You have a way to learn the language, from me? Kakashi asked to clarify what he thought the teen had asked and Harry nodded. How? Harry touched his own temple. From here. Only take language, no memories, thoughts. Promise. Not hurt. Harry bit his lip nervously. He would be able to pick the language up fairly quickly on his own, because of his parselting abilities, he was able to learn languages a lot faster than normal, but they didn't have the time for that. Kakashi stared at the obviously nervous teen. He could take knowledge from his mind. That made him nervous, but was it all that different from what the Yamanaka clan could do? The main question was whether or not he could trust Harry. It was rather convenient that they had been placed in the same cell after all, and he had only shown his skills when it had become utterly necessary. Then again, Harry had no reason to trust him, since it had been Shinobi who had thrown him in a cell in the first place. Yes, the teen had saved his life, but he knew nothing about him. How old are you? Harry stared at him in surprise, obviously not expecting the question. If I let you do this, then I need to know about you first. Kakashi explained and the teen nodded. 16. Orphan, run away. Looking, Harry trailed off, obviously unsure as to whether or not he should tell Kakashi. Looking for? He questioned and Harry swallowed before nodding to himself. Cousin. Grandmother from village, don't know which. Cousin somewhere. Harry indicated the expanse around them and shrugged. It wasn't unheard of for people to travel outside and settle, but it was rare. It also explained why Harry was here, an orphan would risk a lot at the chance of finding a family. The clan name? Kakashi asked. Sure, he was curious, but he also needed to know if he recognized the name. Last thing they needed was for the family to be one of the powerful clans from a village Konoha didn't have good relations with. That would make things more than a little awkward, even if the kid didn't realize it. Kakashi mentally, Yamino. Kakashi stared in shock. What were the odds? How many Yamino clans could there be? Iruka? He asked, just to be sure, and it was Harry's turn to look shocked before the teenager nodded warily. You know? Harry asked, suspicious but also hopeful. Yes, he's a teacher in my village. A good man. He smiled behind his mask even though he was still unsure whether or not he should trust such apparent good fortune. Harry obviously felt the same because he still seemed wary and just as unsure as Kakashi felt. He studied the teen closely before deciding, the longer they stayed the more chance someone would find them. Do it, but take some geography as well if you can. In case we get separated. Harry stared at him before he nodded and then moved to kneel on the ground, motioning for Kakashi to do the same. Once they were comfortable, Harry smiled nervously. Try relax. Harry suggested before locking their gazes. Harry reached out for Kakashi's mind and soon found himself inside a traditional Japanese house. He looked around for a bit before finding what he needed. He picked up the scroll and closed his eyes, absorbing the knowledge. Once done, he put it down and repeated the process with a nearby map. He was about to leave when a picture caught his attention. It was of a blonde teenager and a dark-haired man with a scar across his nose. But it was the memory caption that held his attention. Yamino Iruka and Uzumaki Naruto. He blinked and pulled back, out of Kakashi's mind and into the real world. Done. It didn't hurt, did it? I'm still learning and mostly self-taught, since the guy who was teaching me was actually only teaching me to shield my mind. I heard to learn this through observation. Which was true. Harry had learned a lot more from Snape's lessons than the man had ever realized. But childhood habits die hard and Harry had learned young to never show exactly how smart he was. He knew that he could rival Hermione for grades if he ever tried, but had always been content to let her have that spotlight, he had too many on him as it was. Kakashi blinked, it must have worked seeing as the teen was now babbling but understandable, even his accent was convincing. He sounded like anyone who had lived in Konoha did, and that was very strange considering a few minutes ago he had had trouble understanding the teen. Slow down Harry, I didn't feel a thing. Good. When my teacher used to do that to me it hurt a lot. But then again we didn't exactly get along so I figured he was doing it purposely. I got the map too. We're in Rice country. Too saw a picture as well. I didn't go snooping or anything, it was right there with the map and language scroll, so I couldn't help but see it. Harry was still babbling but at least at a slower pace, making Kakashi fight a grin. It was a Veruca, wasn't it? Kakashi asked and Harry nodded nervously. Sorry. I didn't see anything else, I swear. It must have been there because we'd just been talking about him so it was on the surface. Kakashi nodded and moved to stretch, hiding a wince. Are you okay? I should check your injuries. Okay, so maybe he hadn't hidden the wince very well. You did a pretty good job of patching them up considering where we were and the fact that you used your shirt. He commented, earning a shy smile. He got the feeling Harry hadn't received many compliments or much praise before. Thanks. I end up in the school infirmary so often that the nurse figured it would be a good idea for me to have some basic healing skills. Harry explained as he unwound the strips of his shirt from the various wounds. There should be bandages in your pouch. Kakashi told him and Harry nodded, digging them out and re-bandaging the wounds that needed it. Kakashi let him work, watching him as he studied each wound carefully. His hands were gentle but calloused. He was no pampered child that was for sure what's it like. Harry looked up, puzzled England. Kakashi clarified and Harry shrugged, lowering his head. Okay I guess. Cold and wet a lot of the time. I won't miss it. Kakashi could hear the pain in his voice, so he decided to leave it for now. So Iruka's your only family? As of a few days before I ended up in that cell. Got sent to the shops and came back to find a crater where the house used to be, no survivors. There's nothing for me there anymore, not that I have a clue how to get back. Transportation was kind of one way. Harry shrugged. Not to mention the portkey and his wand had been taken from him, even the choker with his new trunk, as part of it was still back and sound finished. Nothing's infected, yet. You need to be careful. I don't recognize the plant life, which means if you do develop an infection I won't know which will heal and which will harm. We can't wait here for me to heal, we're too close to sound. If we're attacked can you do whatever it was you did in the cell? I wouldn't count on it. I'm not entirely sure how I did it then considering what I did is meant to be impossible. Harry shrugged again and stood, stretching out his aching muscles. Can you tell me the general direction of Konoha? If we get separated you need to head that way as fast as you can and not stop for anything. Tell them what has happened and they'll help you. Kakashi explained. Harry looked up at the sun to judge the direction. That way. He pointed and Kakashi nodded. Let's go. You set the pace, something you can maintain for as long as possible. Harry nodded and took off. Kakashi was surprised at his speed, faster than a civilian, but not quite as fast as a genin. Still, it was better than he'd hoped for. Kakashi. Harry stopped and looked back at the older man. That out of sight. Harry obeyed instantly, slipping into some bushes and keeping utterly still. Kakashi was glad the teen could follow orders like that. He'd replaced the sound hit I ate a day ago with his own, since they were getting close to the border, and Harry had ditched his at the same time. Kakashi pulled out a kunai and hit himself, hoping the chakra signatures he could feel approaching were from fellow Leaf Nin, but he doubted it. The only good thing was that with Harry's low and untrained chakra, he would hopefully be overlooked as an animal or something. Kakashi leapt away and the branch he had been crouched on was riddled with kunai. Judging their trajectory he threw his own, and one of the signatures blinked out. Harry stayed still, senses straining to get an idea of what was going on. He bit back a scream when a dead body suddenly dropped down millimeters from his head. He was happy to note that it wasn't Kakashi, but someone from sound going by the headband. He moved his hand just enough to relieve the body of its kunai holster, pulling one out. If it came down to it he wasn't going out without a fight, and Kakashi had all the weapons that had been with the stolen uniforms. He waited silently to the occasional noise and grunts as the fight continued before everything fell silent. Harry? Are you alright? Harry relaxed as Kakashi called to him and stood slowly. Over here, I'm fine. He called, not wanting to get killed because Kakashi thought he was one of the bad guys. Thanks for dropping a corpse on me by the way, he shuddered slightly as he spoke, that had not been fun. Are you okay? You're bleeding again. Harry stepped forward and Kakashi let him check the new wound before quickly bandaging it. We need to move quickly. Kakashi said and Harry nodded, handing Kakashi the weapons he'd taken from the body. Kakashi had to admit he was impressed with how Harry was handling things. Having a dead body drop on him had to have been disconcerting to say the least, and yet he had stayed concealed, even managing to search the body for weapons and arming himself with them. He obviously wasn't used to death the way a ninja was, but he had definitely seen it before, several times. As if sensing what he was thinking about, Harry spoke. My parents were killed when I was 1. At 14 I watched a classmate killed, unable to do anything. A few months ago the closest person to a father I've ever known was killed rescuing me. Harry kept his back to Kakashi as he spoke, and Kakashi let him have his privacy. That explained why he was able to react the way he did. Let's go. Once again he let Harry set the pace while he thought about what he had learned. Sounded like Harry's life hadn't been easy up to now, but it explained why he had accepted Kakashi's actions in the cell so easily. The teen was carrying around a lot of pain that, if he was allowed to stay in Konoha, Kakashi knew Iruka could help him with. Kakashi watched Harry as they ran through the brush. He would prefer to be in the trees, but without chakra training he would have to carry Harry, and he was still sore enough to want to avoid that unless necessary. Luckily the attack yesterday morning was the only one so far. He was suddenly brought out of his thoughts when Harry slammed into him, knocking them to the ground. His first thoughts were of betrayal, and that Harry was an excellent actor until he heard the teen's cry of pain. Kakashi rolled them, coming up in a protective stance over Harry. He swore as he got a look at the large snake, a snake with fresh blood on its fangs. Harry had saved his life, but without immediate medical aid he would lose his own. However, if he moved it would leave Harry open to further attack, but the boy was as good as dead, and he couldn't fight a snake from his current position. He jerked back in shock, grip tightening on his kunai, as he heard low hissing coming not from the snake, but from below him. He glanced down warily to see that Harry had managed to push himself up on one elbow and was hissing dangerously at the snake. Kakashi backed slowly away from both, not sure which was the greater threat. He stared in shock as the snake slowly backed off, seeming to bow to Harry. Harry? What? Pain-hazed eyes slowly focused on him, and Harry smiled crookedly up at him before his arm crumpled under him and he lay on the ground. Kakashi slowly approached and rolled the teen onto his back. Someone set snakes to track hustle protect you no jitsu home. Harry swallowed and his eyes slid shut before he forced them open again, forbidden to attack a speaker, but no Timianly heard her at the last. Harry coughed and Kakashi pulled him up to sit against a tree, hopefully making it easier for him to breathe. He pulled out their remaining bandages, hoping to slow the venom's progress to give Harry a chance, but the teen weakly pushed his hand away. 2008. He whispered and Kakashi nodded, he'd known that, but he didn't want to have to sit and watch the boy die. Stay with me, Harry. How do you think Iruka will feel if I show up with his dead cousin? He needs family just as much as you do. Kakashi tried to convince Harry to fight, even though he knew it was useless. Harry was gasping for air and his eyes were unfocused. Sorry. Harry gasped and then began hissing softly, holding a shaking hand out to the snake who slithered over and up his arm. He listened to the snake before hissing again and nodding weakly when safe kill. Hair attacked a speaker, punishment death. Wish I could meet Iruka. Harry's voice had been gradually getting softer as he spoke, and now his head fell forward even as his eyes slid shut and his body slumped limply against the tree. The snake flicked its tongue over his skin before butting his head with its own, as if trying to get him to wake up. When that didn't work, the snake slowly slithered onto Kakashi's arm and wrapped herself around him gently, keeping her fans away from any vital points. Kakashi sat and stared at the teen, he was not moving until it was over, and Harry was still breathing, even if it was barely detectable. He would carry the teen's body back to Konoha where he would receive a proper burial. DBC. Chapter 3. Kakashi stayed still, watching as Harry's breathing continued to slow. The snake coiled around his body with her head resting on his shoulder. The teen was extremely pale now, and the bite had stopped bleeding, although there was a small trickle of blood from his mouth. What shocked him into actually moving back was when Harry suddenly went rigid and then screamed. Moving fast, he placed his hand over the teen's mouth to smother the noise, even as emerald eyes flew open, reflecting the utter agony Harry was experiencing. Kakashi shot a glare at the snake and pulled out a kunai. He would kill Harry and spare him any more pain, but the snake tightened a coil around his arm and hissed a warning, causing him to still. A few seconds later Harry spasmed and then went limp, but his breathing had improved and he had a bit more color. Reaching forward, Kakashi checked his pulse and found it to be weak but steady. He frowned and thought, somehow Harry was no longer dying from the poison. Something to do with his ability to speak to the snake. He didn't think so because Harry had seemed to honestly believe he was dying. A low groan brought his attention back from his thoughts. Harry, can you hear me? He asked softly. To his amazement, green eyes fluttered open briefly even as Harry's hand twitched. Kakashi gripped his hand and smiled as he felt an answering squeeze, albeit very weak. Kashi. The word was very faint but decipherable. Hang in there, Harry, I'll get you to safety. Can you tell the snake to get off me? I need to carry you. Kakashi sighed as Harry appeared to have passed out again, but then a very faint hissing reached his ears. The snake carefully uncoiled from around him only to coil up around Harry even more gently. Moving carefully, Kakashi lifted Harry and positioned him onto his back before taking to the trees. He doubted Harry's scream had gone unheard and wanted to put as much distance between them and that clearing as possible. As he ran, he tried to ignore the quiet hissing from the snake. To his surprise, he found that if he had to label the hissing, he would say that it was meant to be comforting. It appeared the snake was trying to comfort the unconscious teen. Kakashi dropped from the trees and onto the road, walking the rest of the way without trying to hide. Since the snake had attacked, they'd had no further trouble, although she had left twice and returned looking rather smug for a snake. Harry had been in and out of consciousness, although his periods of wakefulness were increasing, something that Kakashi took as a good sign, even if he wasn't always coherent. The guards looked shocked for a second when he stepped into view before one vanished, presumably to get a medical team and report his return. He walked closer and then carefully lowered Harry to the ground. The teen moaned and twitched slightly but didn't wake, but the remaining guard stiffened as he noticed the snake coiled around Harry's body. A few seconds later, the other guard returned with a medical team and Tsunade. Hokage. Kakashi gave a short, stiff bow. His remaining injuries, and having carried Harry plus a large snake, had taken their toll on his body. Who is that? Tsunade asked suspiciously, eyeing the snake. Harry, we shared a cell in sound. He saved my life twice. Kakashi stepped closer, pitching his voice for Harry's ears alone. Some things about the teen needed to be kept secret. He's an outsider, and he has abilities that could be very useful. For one, he can talk to snakes. That one was meant to kill us both, but because of Harry it has protected us. He needs medical attention though. So do you. They both looked over as the snake hissed a warning to the medics when they got too close. I'll put him on the stretcher. Kakashi offered and they gladly moved back, eyeing the teen and the snake with distrust and a little fear. Not a word of this to anyone. For now this boy is a S-rank secret. Tsunade announced, seeing their looks and thinking about what Kakashi had said. She watched as Kakashi gently lifted the teen and placed him on the stretcher. Taking a deep breath, he held his arm out to the snake. Come on. Please, he needs treatment. The snake looked between Kakashi and the others warily. Tsunade stepped up and bravely allowed the snake to examine her, holding still as its tongue flicked over her skin. Slowly it uncoiled from around Harry and moved onto Kakashi. Comfortable, brat? Tsunade asked. Not really, but trust me, you don't want to get bitten. He held up Harry's arm to reveal the still inflamed wound, and the Hokage's eyes widened in shock. Let's go. She called and they moved swiftly to the hospital. Kakashi looked up as Tsunade and Ibiki walked in. How is he? He asked. The snake raised her head from where she was sunning herself on the windowsill. Stable and sleeping. Shizune is watching over him and there are Anbu outside his room. Care to explain what happened? The mission failed and I was captured. When I came to, I was in a cell, chained to the wall. Kakashi explained everything that had happened from his capture until the guards had seen them on the road. He stopped finally to take a long drink of water, wetting his parched throat. There's more. Ibiki stated and Kakashi nodded. He has family here, through his grandmother. Did he tell you a name? Tsunade asked. Yeah, you mean Oruka, and he gave the name before going into my mind so he didn't get it from me. Shocked silence met his announcement. Do you believe him? Ibiki asked. Yes. He's shown no sign of lying to me, withholding things yes but not lying. He could be a spy. Ibiki pointed out. Agreed, but his ability makes him a too obvious choice, and Orochimaru is usually a little more subtle. Have someone find Iruka. I want to know if he knows anything about a family member leaving the villages. For now we'll keep a guard on the boy and watch him closely. Tsunade ordered and Ibiki left. As much as I know you won't like it, I want one of the Amanaka to take a look at you, just as a precaution. Kakashi nodded in understanding. Other than that, you'll be fine. He did a good job with your injuries. Harry groaned and forced his eyes open before shutting them again as the light hit them. He moaned and tried to bury his head, only to stop at the sound of someone chuckling. He sighed as he recognized the distinctive smells of a hospital and finally opened his eyes, gazing around warily. Welcome back. His gaze focused on the masked silver-haired man and he smiled slightly. We made it. He croaked and gratefully drank the water the older man gave him. He could feel Kakashi smiling behind his mask. We made it. You've been out for nearly a week though, since you're meant to be dead that's not bad. Kakashi told him and Harry frowned, trying to remember what had happened. The snake, shouldn't I be dead? Harry looked at Kakashi in confusion and then looked around the room as he heard a familiar noise. Looking over at the window he saw the snake sunning herself. Number hello young speaker. Number, the snake hissed as she raised her head to stare at him. Number hello. What happened? Number, Harry asked. Number, basilisk and phoenix. Number, she said before going back to sleep. Harry stared blankly for a few seconds before cracking up and then going into a coughing fit, causing Kakashi to leap to his feet and try to help. And that was the scene the Hokage walked in on. DBC. Chapter 4. Iruka stared at the Hokage, unsure as to why he had been called. He fought the urge to shift nervously and stared at the wall, waiting for her to acknowledge him. Finally Tsunade put her paperwork aside and looked at him steadily. "Tell me about your family," she ordered, and Iruka's jaw dropped. "What?" Seeing his look, her expression softened. "It's important, Iruka." Looking at her, he nodded and steeled himself. "My mother was Yumi no Sachi, an only child. My father was Yumi no Kiyoshi, and he had an older sister, Aiko. I never met her, she left before I was born. That's all I know really." Iruka shrugged. "May I ask what this is about, Hokage-sama?" When Kakashi returned from his last mission, he wasn't alone. With him was a young man who was looking for his remaining family. She paused and Iruka stared at her in growing shock. "Was it possible we ran tests, but they aren't very reliable, considering the gap between you, as you would be second cousins? Are you saying he is claiming to be my cousin?" Iruka's disbelief was obvious. "What village is he from? It could be a trap to get a spy in here, but then why my family? Why not someone more important?" Iruka found himself sitting before he had even realized it. For what it is worth, Kakashi doesn't believe he was lying. "That doesn't mean that the boy wasn't lied to and led to believe you are his cousin," Tsunade explained, watching Iruka closely. "Do you believe him?" the teacher finally asked. "I don't know, I haven't spoken to him. He was injured saving Kakashi and has yet to regain consciousness. Do we know anything about him?" "Just what he told Kakashi. His name is Harry. He's 16 and an orphan. Kakashi also reported him having some skills that could be very useful in the fight with sound. So he's shinobi. You never said what village he's from." Iruka stared at Tsunade, something wasn't right about her answers. She sighed tiredly. "He isn't a ninja and he isn't from any of the villages. He's an outsider." Iruka knew he was staring at her dumbly, but he couldn't help it. "Really, I'm sure you understand the sorts of problems that information getting out could cause." "Yes ma'am," Iruka answered distractedly. "Is it possible your aunt left?" Tsunade asked and Iruka thought about it. "I guess. No one really talked about her. She was several years older than my father and was a civilian. My parents weren't even married when she left." They both fell silent, thinking about the teenager laying unconscious in the hospital. "Hokage-sama." Tsunade focused back on him. "Do you think it's possible that he's really my cousin?" "It's not impossible." She stopped as Shizune appeared in the doorway. "He's awake," she said, and Tsunade left immediately for the hospital, Iruka right behind her. She stopped in the hallway just down from Harry's room. "Stay out here for now, I want to talk to him first. I'll call you in when I'm done and we'll see how he reacts to you." Iruka nodded, nervous but refusing to show it as Tsunade approached the door. Tsunade walked in to see the teen doubled up, coughing, with Kakashi trying to help him by giving him water. The boy had tears streaming down his face and was trying not to laugh even as he continued to cough. She walked over and helped him stop coughing, earning a grateful smile. "Care to explain what that was about?" she asked, and Kakashi shrugged. "He was talking to the snake and then he just started laughing, which led to coughing," the gray-haired man explained. Harry, finally quiet, looked her over curiously. There was something about her that said she was older than she looked, glamour of some type. Excuse me?" The two Konoha natives turned to look at a nervous Harry. "Who are you?" he asked politely. "I'm the Hokage Tsunade, kid." "Oh. Nice to meet you, ma'am." "Well," Tsunade thought, at least he's polite. She studied him closely now that he was awake. Intense green eyes that held pain and shadows to match many shinobi met her stare. Messy black hair fell to his collar and partially hid the weird scar on his forehead. He wasn't tall, but at 5'6" he wasn't incredibly short either, and he was young enough to still have some growing left. She didn't like the fact that he was malnourished and underweight, not dangerously so, but still too thin to be healthy. Tests had revealed several previously broken bones, some that had never healed correctly, and the bones in one arm were actually somehow younger than the rest of the bones in his body, which made absolutely no sense. Then there were the traces of very odd substances in his bloodstream. Despite all that, he was remarkably healthy, and that only added to her reasons for being suspicious of him. "So, Harry, want to tell me your full name and what you were doing in that cell?" Tsunade asked, and the teen's gaze seemed to intensify for a bit before he nodded, and she felt nervous for some reason. Then it hit her. Kakashi had said he used eye contact when entering his mind. Her gaze became icy. "Do you just go into my mind?" Harry blinked at her. "No ma'am. That ability takes a lot of effort on my part, but I was trying to judge your intentions. I'm alone in a place I know nothing about, would you do any differently?" Tsunade found herself agreeing because honestly, she couldn't say she wouldn't do exactly what he had just done. She nodded and the teen took a deep breath. My full name back home would be said Harry James Potter, but here it would be Potter Harry I guess. My parents were killed when I was a baby and I was sent to live with my mother's sister and her family. They were killed on August 18th and I ran. Why? Tsunade asked, had the boy killed them? Because the people who killed them were after me. Staying there and letting them find me didn't seem like a smart thing to do. I made it to safety only to find out a few things that had been kept secret from me, one of them being the fact that I have more family and then left for here. Unfortunately you guys are really well hidden, so I ended up in the middle of nowhere with no clue. Then 3 guys show up, grab me and throw me in a cell. I think I was in there for about 4 days before they chucked Kakashi in. Harry fell silent and then blushed as his stomach let its empty state be known to all of them, earning a chuckle from Kakashi. Kakashi, go get him some food. Tsunade ordered and Kakashi left. How did you save him in the cell? And how is it you can talk to snakes? Let alone survive that bite. Kakashi said he didn't sense you using any chakra. What's that? Harry blinked at her shocked look and then shook his head as if saying ignore the question please. How much do you know about the outside world? He asked, wanting to know how much he should and needed to tell her. We're pretty up to date on world events, but I've never heard of anyone doing what Kakashi described you doing. She told him and Harry nodded, thinking. He thought about it for a bit and then shrugged mentally, why not? It wasn't like that world had done him any favors so why protect it? Tsunade could see that he was trying to decide what to tell her and let him, if she felt he was lying, she could always have him questioned a little more thoroughly, even though she would feel bad for it after seeing his test results. She watched as he came to a decision and met her eyes, his own holding determination and surprisingly fear. You believe in magic? Yo. Haruka looked up as Kakashi approached from the room the Hokage had disappeared into a while ago. Hello Kakashi-san. The Jounin pulled his book out and began reading, smirking slightly as the Chunin fought down the urge to berate him for his reading material. She's talking to Harry. You're waiting to be called in I suppose, could be a long wait. She sent me to get him some food. Kakashi told him as he started to walk away. Do you believe him? The tease. Yes. Help him Haruka-sensei. With that cryptic statement he disappeared around the corner, leaving behind a confused teacher. Tsunade stared at the teen sitting on the bed in front of her. He had kept eye contact the entire time he had spoken and hadn't stumbled over any of his answers when she'd asked questions, except when it was obvious he was deciding whether or not it was something she really needed to know. His story was a bit hard to swallow. Magic. Then again wouldn't chakra seem that way to many? Seeing her look the teen smirked slightly, it wasn't arrogant though, but amused. You should have seen my reaction when I first learned that magic existed. He explained. I'd had it drummed into my head for 11 years that there was no such thing, and then I was suddenly dumped into this new world with little explanation. Harry shrugged. That doesn't explain how you survived the bite. Tsunade pointed out and Harry nodded. When I was 12 I faced a basilisk. Basically the most deadly snake there is. Just making eye contact is deadly. To kill it I shoved a sword up through the roof of its mouth and didn't manage to miss all of its fangs, ended up with one lodged in my arm. He showed her the 2 sides of the scar and her eyes widened as she realized just how big the snake had been. Basilisk venom in any quantity is fatal and I'd gotten a pretty good dose. I was barely conscious not even 5 minutes later. The only reason I survived was because of Fox, a phoenix. You do know what a phoenix is don't you? The mythical, immortal firebird. Tsunade answered. Well, not so mythical actually. Fox healed me with his tears and I've never thought much of the incident since. According to our resident snake however it had something to do with my survival. Which shouldn't be possible, wouldn't the tears and venom have cancelled each other out? Harry frowned in puzzlement. Perhaps, though it could explain some of the odd substances we picked up in your blood. She explained. They looked over to the door as Kakashi walked back in with a tray full of food. Both adults watched as the teen demolished it, amused at the sight. Harry looked up and blushed. Sorry, someone needs to tell that guy to feed his prisoners better. I'll be sure to mention it the next time I see him. Tsunade replied with a smirk. Kakashi looked between the two. Obviously they had been talking since he'd left. Welcome to Konoha Potter-san. You will be under observation until I am absolutely positive that you are not a spy for anyone. These are dangerous times and I will not put my people in danger. I understand Hokage-sama. Frankly if I was in your shoes I'd do the same thing. Any other rules or anything I need to follow? Tsunade's respect of the teen went up another notch at the calm response. No wandering outside the village. No telling anyone where you are from or what you are. We'll say that you were raised on a small farm away from any villages by your relatives to explain any slips you make. After they were killed you decided to go looking for the rest of your family and ran into Kakashi on the road. At least you know the language and some geography. Now about the snake. Tsunade trailed off and they all turned to look at said serpent. Dollar what dollar, she hissed. Dollar what's your name? I'm sorry I forgot to ask dollar. Dollar that's fine speaker, you were dying after all dollar she hissed, and even the others could tell she was amused dollar I have no name. You may call me what you wish dollar Harry thought about it, not noticing the weird and slightly uncomfortable looks he was getting. He suddenly grinned a grin worthy of the Marauders. Dollar Vespillo. Roughly translated it means gravedigger, and since you were meant to kill us, I think it's oddly fitting. Ves for short dollar. Dollar Vespillo I like it. Thank you Master Dollar. Dollar not Master, Harry. I've had some bad experiences with that particular title dollar he shuddered at the memories. Dollar as you wish Harry dollar with that vest coiled back up and went to sleep. Well? Harry blushed as he realized Tsunade was staring at him. Kakashi had gone back to his book. Sorry. Her name's Vespillo. Vespillo? Tsunade asked, frowning over the pronunciation of the strange name. Yeah, loosely translated it means gravedigger. Kakashi snorted slightly at that, fitting name considering how close she had come to putting the teen in his basically her life belongs to me because I'm a speaker and she attacked me, even if she was aiming at Kakashi at the time. Apparently snakes have a pretty strict code when it comes to us because we're so rare. Is Orochimaru a speaker? Tsunade asked, she'd never seen him speak like Harry, but that didn't mean he couldn't. She waited as Harry turned back to the snake. No, he just has a contract. Harry looked puzzled by that, but the others nodded. Well if he attacks with those summoned snakes of his again at least Harry will be able to tell them to go eat someone else. Kakashi commented flippantly, earning a glare from Tsunade and a choked giggle from Harry. Now, there is someone who has been waiting in the hall the entire time to meet you Harry. He was instantly serious as she said that, a glimmer of hope and more than a little nervousness in his eyes. I'll tell him to come in and we'll leave the two of you. What you tell him is up to you, he knows that you have abilities and that you're an outsider. Tsunade stood and headed for the door, Kakashi trailing after her after tossing Harry a goodbye wave. DBC. Chapter 5. Iruka straightened as Tsunade and Kakashi walked towards him. He's all yours sensei. He's still recovering so take it easy. Of course. Iruka looked at the door nervously and Tsunade smirked. Get in there. She gave him what for her was a gentle push towards the still open door and he staggered. Iruka straightened and then stepped inside, his eyes immediately going to the bed. The first thing Iruka saw were intense green eyes staring straight at him. They held eye contact for a few minutes before he forced himself to look away and study the teen. His hair was darker than Iruka's own and a lot shorter and messier. He briefly noticed a scar half hidden by the unruly locks but didn't pay much attention to it. What worried him was how thin the boy, his cousin, was. He wasn't pale but only lightly tanned, like he'd been indoors a lot until recently. He finally looked back at his cousin to see the teen was studying him, so he stood still and let him look as much as he wanted. Green eyes finally moved back to his face and Iruka smiled. A hesitant smile answered him and he slowly moved further into the room, taking the chair Kakashi had been keeping watch in. Hello. The teen greeted warily. Hello Harry. Iruka returned the greeting and they fell silent, neither sure what to say next. Dollar do you mind? You two are being annoying dollar Iruka jumped, kunai in hand, and was left staring at the large snake curled up on the windowsill. He swallowed hard at the sight. She won't bite, well unless you attack me or her, then it's in defense. Harry said nervously. Iruka looked between his cousin and the snake warily before sitting again and putting the kunai away. She's yours. She is now. Her name is Vespillo. Iruka nodded and they fell silent again after Harry shot a glare at Ves for scaring Iruka. They sat in silence for nearly 10 minutes before Harry spoke again. Kakashi said you're a teacher. Do you enjoy it? He felt like hitting himself for the lameness of what he just said, but at least it was a start, right? It's very rewarding but very exhausting. Teaching children to be ninjas is hard work. I'll bet. So what now? Harry shifted nervously on the bed. We get to know each other, isn't that why you came here? Yeah. Harry smiled again, but this time it was warmer and far less wary. Well, I'm 28 and a Chunin. I teach at the academy and work at the missions desk. My parents were killed 14 years ago during the Kyuubi attack. They were Kiyoshi and Sachi Yamino. They were both Jounin. I was an only child because mother couldn't have any more children, but we were happy. I had an aunt, my father's sister, but she left Konoha a long time ago. Aiko. Harry said softly and Iruka nodded. Yumino Aiko married Jonathan Evans and they had 2 daughters, Petunia and Lily. Lily married. Iruka smiled and squeezed his shoulder, understanding his pain. Iruka left his hand on Harry's shoulder, feeling the boy begin to lean into his touch. He had felt the way Harry had tensed when he had touched him, the same way Naruto used to tense, and it worried him. Then Harry's top slipped down and Iruka's eyes went wide as he got a look at the teen's back. Harry frowned and then followed his eyes before pulling away and yanking the top further up, covering the scars. His eyes were wide and he was almost falling off the bed. Moving quickly, Iruka wrapped his arms around him, pulling him safely back onto the bed fully. Harry went completely stiff in his arms before beginning to struggle, but he was still weak from being unconscious so long and the effects of Vespillo's venom, plus Iruka was a fully trained ninja. Iruka just held him, feeling tears of frustration soak into his uniform. He'd seen that type of scaring before on a ninja who had been brutally whipped as part of a torture session to gain information. But the scars on Harry's back were old, meaning that someone had whipped a child. It was then that his mind was made up, he would take Harry in and give him the type of family he had had before his parents had died. He didn't care anymore if the teen wasn't really his cousin, he needed help and he would give it, simple as that. He held Harry until he stopped fighting and the tears stopped. He pulled back to see the teen was asleep and smiled. He made sure Harry was comfortable on the bed before standing and looking at the snake that had been watching him closely the entire time. Better get used to me, Vespillo, if you plan to stay with Harry, because I am not letting him go. He wasn't very surprised to see the snake bob its head as if it understood. I'll be back soon. Iruka slipped out of the room, ignoring the guards by the door even as they looked at him. Obviously they had been aware of what had been happening in the room, but as far as he was concerned it was none of their business. Excuse me, Hokage-sama. Tsunade looked up from Kakashi's report to see Iruka in her doorway and motioned for him to come in. That was quick. She commented. He's asleep. How long until he can be discharged from the hospital and what will happen to him then? Iruka asked, hoping that Harry was to be allowed to stay. He was surprisingly very understanding of the restrictions I've placed on him and will be allowed to stay. We just need to find a place for him. That won't be necessary, he will stay with me. She looked at him in surprise. Oh? Both you and Kakashi believe his claims to being my cousin, and after meeting him I agree. He needs a place to live and I have a spare room. I need to do this. Very well. Since that has been sorted out, you can take him home today if you want. Kakashi can sneak Vespillo over later. Iruka smiled. Thank you. He bowed and left for home to fix the spare room up for Harry before returning to the hospital. Harry blinked up at the ceiling hazily, still mostly asleep. Awake again, Harry. He sat up and stared at Vess in confusion. You fell asleep on the other human. Harry blushed and looked around, but other than Vess and himself the room was empty. He left after you fell asleep, but said he'd be back soon. Harry nodded and relaxed back into the pillows. He doubted he'd be back, not after seeing the scars and having Harry lash out at him. Harry groaned and banged his head against the pillows, so much for a fresh start with family. Their reason for trying to kill the pillow? An amused voice asked and Harry sat up quickly to face the door. Iruka was standing there, smiling at him. Harry simply sat and stared at him, not knowing how to react. In the few minutes they had known each other, Iruka had shown him more honest concern than everyone but Mrs. Weasley and serious ready to get out of here. Iruka asked as he walked over to the cupboard, frowning as he found the torn but obviously recently cleaned uniform. Kakashi's idea. Apparently it's easier to sneak out if you look like you belong. We'll need to get you some clothes then. Good thing I thought to bring some of mine. They'll be a bit big but better than this thing. He tossed a bag onto the bed and Harry opened it to reveal a pair of comfortable looking pants and shirt. Do you have any belongings? No, they took everything I had before putting me in the cell. Well, we'll see what we can do about getting you a few things other than clothes. Iruka said, mentally going over how much money he had spare. Without treating Naruto to raiment so often, he had more money than he would have if Naruto were still in Konoha. He smiled as he noticed the lost look on Harry's face and sat on the edge of the bed. Hokage-sama said you can be discharged now, so we'll be going home. Harry stared at him blankly. Home? The teen asked quietly. Home, Harry, with me. Iruka reached out and wrapped an arm around the two thin shoulders. Why? You don't know me. Harry moved restlessly, part of him wanting to pull away, but another part wanting to curl into Iruka and never move, and those mixed emotions confused him. Not yet, I don't, that will take time. In the meantime you need a home and I have the room. Since I don't take mission, I can help you adapt to life here easier than a more active shinobi. And more than that, your family, the only family I have. I want to get to know you, Harry, and for you to know me. He tightened his grip a bit, making it more of a one-armed hug, and smiled as he felt the teen beginning to relax into him. So are you ready to go? He asked again and Harry slowly nodded. I'll wait outside while you get dressed. Kakashi will come by later to sneak Vespillo out into the house. Okay. Harry waited until Iruka had closed the door before stripping off the hospital-issue pajamas and changing into the two big clothes. Luckily he had plenty of practice with Dudley's cast-offs and so he was able to make them work. You look ridiculous. Vess hissed in amusement. Thanks. You heard all that. I will allow him to carry me to you. She hissed and Harry leant on the sill, running his fingers over her black scales. I'll see you later then. What do you need for food? All or nothing yet, I ate well on the trip. Something about that made Harry shiver, but he didn't ask. All are okay, see you later then. Harry moved over to the door and opened it to see Iruka standing with two men in white masks and black robes. He froze in fear, eyes wide, and bolted back into the room. The two masked men looked at each other and then at Iruka. Maybe if you could make yourselves a little less obvious. The teacher suggested before going after his cousin. He couldn't see him, but Vespilla was staring at the ensuite door, so he walked over and knocked Harry. Are you alright? Can you open the door please? Iruka asked on finding that it was locked. There was no answer, so Iruka concentrated and reappeared inside the bathroom to find Harry having a panic attack. He picked the teen up and forced the door open. Walking over to the bed, he sat down and held Harry tightly as the teen stared blankly ahead while hyperventilating. Iruka pulled Harry closer as the door opened but relaxed as Tsunade rushed in. What happened? He saw the Anbu and panicked. I found him locked in the bathroom like this. Iruka explained as Tsunade ran diagnostic jutsus over the teen. Harry? Look at me, Harry. Tsunade coaxed and very slowly, green eyes focused on her. That's it, it's okay. You're safe. Death Eaters? They found me. Harry began trying to get away, but Iruka tightened his grip and Kakashi moved so that Harry could see him as well. Harry, there are no Death Eaters here. He smiled at the teen but was worried. Where was the confident young man that had saved his life? In his place was a scared teenager. Saw them? They'll kill you all just to get to me. Iruka frowned at the response, the only other people Harry had seen. Harry, they were Anbu members, not Death Eaters. Anbu wear masks to conceal their identity. Harry turned to look up at Iruka, disbelief in his eyes. Iruka smiled down at his cousin, the boy trembling in his arms, but at least his breathing was calming. I promise, they won't hurt you. They are the Hokage's bodyguard and elite ninjas, but they are not Death Eaters. Not that Iruka knew what a Death Eater was. He looked at Tsunade and Kakashi, but they were as lost as he was. Let one of them in here. Tsunade ordered and Harry went as stiff as a board. Kakashi went to the door and soon returned with one of the guards. Harry went wild as soon as he saw the cloak and mask, fighting Iruka's hold with everything he had. Iruka tightened his grip and whispered soothing words to the distraught teen. Remove your hood. The Anbu obeyed, eyes hidden by his mask flicking from the hysterical teen to his Hokage. Harry, look at me. She commanded and the teen automatically looked at Tsunade even as he struggled against his cousin's grip. That's it. Now look closely at him. Does he look exactly like a Death Eater or is there only a resemblance? She asked calmly, motioning the confused Anbu closer to the bed and more fully into the teen's line of sight. Harry stared with wide eyes at the man. They all relaxed a little as Harry began to calm and then he slowly raised a shaking hand to the man's mask, tracing it. It's an animal? Harry asked softly and the Anbu nodded. Harry relaxed back into Iruka's arms without thinking about it. Not a Death Eater. Harry said quietly. What is the difference in their appearance, Harry? Tsunade asked. The mask. Death Eaters are just plain white. Sorry. He muttered, curling up. I think I better get him home, Hokage-sama. Iruka said, easily standing even with Harry's added weight. Good idea. She flashed through some hand seals and the teen went limp and sleep. He'll be out for at least 6 hours. Be careful, it looks like everything's catching up to him so he might be a little emotional for a while. Iruka nodded and left the hospital, cradling Harry gently in his arms. DBC. Chapter 6. Iruka tore into the room, weapons in hand and ready to defend his cousin from any attackers, only to stare in shock at the sight of Harry writhing on his bed, locked in a nightmare. Weapons vanished as he moved to the bed and gently placed a hand on Harry's shoulder, only to pull back as the teen lashed out. Harry, wake up, it's just a dream. He called as his cousin continued to twist and scream in his sleep. Harry jerked away and seeing a figure leaning over him, threw himself into the nearest corner, curling up to protect his body while babbling. So sorry uncle. Please don't hit me. I'll be good. Please. Iruka had frozen as Harry had moved to the corner, but upon hearing that he was moving again. He knelt in front of Harry and gently reached out to cup his face. Harry, look at me. It's Iruka, not your uncle. You're safe here, whatever you saw was a dream. Iruka kept talking as he slowly moved into a better position and then cradled the scared teen in his arms, rocking him gently. He nodded at the shadowy figure in the doorway and it left without Harry noticing. He smiled as he felt Harry slowly relaxing in his arms, so much for Tsunade's jutsu lasting 6 hours, it had only been 3. Iruka? Harry finally asked, voice hoarse from his screams and crying. Yeah, you okay now? I'm sorry. Harry whispered. For what? This? Everyone has nightmares sometime, Harry. Though that seemed a little more violent than the usual. Harry went tense and Iruka sighed. He knew the teen wouldn't just suddenly open up to him just because they were family. You don't have to tell me, Harry. Let's get you back to bed. Hokage-sama let you out on the understanding that you would get plenty of sleep. Iruka stood, helping Harry to his feet. It was only then that Harry realized they were no longer in the hospital. "Where are we?" he asked, looking around at the unadorned room curiously. "My house, you're home now. This will be your room, we can work on it and decorate it how you want later." Haruka explained, "I think the grand tour can wait until tomorrow." He helped Harry back into bed and tucked him, making the teen blush from embarrassment, but Haruka could see that he was enjoying the attention. "Just call if you need anything." Harry nodded and got comfortable, quickly drifting back off to sleep, and Haruka left the room. "Everything okay?" The Chunin smiled and stepped into Kakashi's embrace. "Nightmare, he's asleep now." The way he was screaming, he seriously thought he was being attacked. Haruka was content to just stay in the warmth of his lover's arms and not move, but his stomach reminded him that he hadn't eaten since lunch dinner. "Thanks." Kakashi smiled as he watched Haruka move around the kitchen. He was a little worried about what they were going to do now. Their relationship was a complete secret, but now with Harry living with Haruka, how would they be together? "Don't worry about it." Haruka stated quietly, startling Kakashi and making the smaller man smile. "We'll work something out, somehow. I'm not losing you." Haruka finished quietly, moving in to steal a kiss before returning to his cooking. "By the way, Vess is in your room." Haruka rolled his eyes. "Thanks. Any problems smuggling her here?" "None. You okay with sharing a house with a highly deadly snake?" "Yes, I'll have to get used to her." Haruka shrugged. "Where did you find Harry?" Haruka. "I know, don't ask about your missions." "I'm sorry." Haruka leant back as Kakashi moved behind him and wrapped his arms around the Chunin's waist. "Let's just say that his first impression of Shinobi wasn't the best and that he's handy in a tight situation. Not bad at first date either." Kakashi buried his face in Haruka's hair and smiled. "He's different now to how he was when we met. He's a lot less secure and confident than he was." "Maybe it was the circumstances. By the sounds of it you were in a fight or something, so maybe he can handle a fight but isn't as sure when around new people." "He's affection-starved." Kakashi, "the same as Naruto. When I first started showing him I was there for him." "Does it sound weird that I want to know who hurt him and why and fix it? I don't even know him." Haruka shook his head, frustrated, and heard Kakashi sigh before he was turned in his arms and found himself staring into his lover's unmasked face. "No, it doesn't. I found myself feeling protective of him pretty quickly too. He hasn't had an easy life, not as bad as some shinobi but still not easy. There's a lot of hurt and fear below the surface. Haruka, he needs help." Haruka moved and kissed Kakashi softly. "Then he'll get it." "Good morning, Harry." Haruka greeted as the teen stumbled into the kitchen. Harry blinked sleepily before muttering a hello and collapsing into a chair. Haruka chuckled and put a plate of food down in front of him. The smell finished waking the teen up and he stared at the plate in shock. "Eat up, we need to do some shopping. You can't wear my clothes all the time and we need to personalize your room." Harry's shocked look hadn't disappeared, but it had changed targets from his breakfast to his cousin, much to Haruka's amusement. "You don't have to go to any trouble for me." Harry murmured, slowly beginning to eat the, to him, strange food. He still wasn't used to the local cuisine, but he would adjust, at least he was being fed regularly. "I know that, but I want to. We're family, Harry, and that's something I haven't had in a long time." Haruka smiled and ruffled Harry's hair, ignoring the teen's flinch. "Eat up, and then we'll go. Also, you might want to start thinking about what you want to do. I could see about getting you a tutor if you want to learn more about our world. You could find a job somewhere if you want to, but there's no rush. There aren't a lot of teens your age around, since the majority are shinobi, but there are some since a village can't survive with only ninja. I have to be at the academy tomorrow, so you'll be on your own for the day and most of the time after that. After class I work at the missions office for a few hours, but I'm home on the weekends unless a mission comes up that they need someone to take and there's no one else free or I need to do one to keep my record up." Haruka explained and Harry nodded. "Go get dressed and we'll get started." Harry. The teen went back to his room and put the oversized pants he'd received the day before back on, tucking the shirt that he'd slept in into them. When he came back out he smiled. "Hello, Kakashi." He greeted the masked man. "Yo. Hokage sent me with a gift." He tossed something and Harry caught it easily to Haruka's surprise, but he wasn't the youngest seeker in a century for nothing. Harry frowned slightly at the wallet but opened it only to stare blankly at the money inside before looking back up at the two adults. "I don't understand." "A reward for saving a shinobi's life, twice. I owe you, Harry." The teen blushed slightly but smiled, thinking about something. "My name stands out, doesn't it?" The other two males gave him odd looks but nodded anyway. "Since you come from a remote rural area but still from our world, your name will stand out." Kakashi confirmed. "Your clan name is easy enough, you are in Yumino after all." Haruka told him, smiling as Harry focused on him. "But Yumino." Harry still sounds a little odd. Harry quirked an eyebrow and Haruka nodded. "So what if I change it? Pick something more local?" "Don't see any reason why you can't. You haven't been introduced to anyone and the records from your stay in hospital have been sealed due to the reason you were there and your abilities. By the way, you can't tell anyone where we met or what happened. Kakashi explained, and Harry gave him a puzzled look because it was a classified mission I was on, and we don't want you to be the subject of kidnapper assassination attempts if your abilities gets out. Good reason. Harry conceded. So, any suggestions? Need a name in case we meet anyone. Let's go see the Hokage, she'll need to know you're changing your name. I'll take Harry, Iruka-sensei. Kakashi rested a hand on Harry's shoulder and they disappeared in a flurry of leaves, Iruka following them. Tsunade stared at the three males standing in front of her desk. The teen had a good point. His name would mark him as an outsider more than his appearance ever would. I don't see any problems with changing your name, Harry. You'll be taking Yumino as your clan name, I assume? She asked, looking between the cousins and smiling as Iruka put his hands on Harry's shoulders. He will. Iruka smiled down at Harry, who smiled back. Next question is, would you prefer to use a name that is in your family or just find one you like the sound of? Tsunade asked and Harry frowned in thought before looking to Iruka and Kakashi. Could always give him a baby name book to read. Kakashi offered with a shrug. What about Hiroshi? Iruka offered suddenly. Yumino Hiroshi. The name's vaguely familiar. Tsunade said, thinking about it, and Iruka nodded. He was my grandfather. I think he would approve of his great-grandson bearing his name. Plus it starts with the same letter as your birth name. He explained, addressing the last to Harry. The name means generous. He continued to explain and Kakashi chuckled. It suits you. He pointed out, smiling behind his mask. Yumino Hiroshi. Harry said slowly, testing it out for himself. Are you sure? He was your grandfather. Harry said, looking to his cousin. He was your family too, Harry. He would have liked to meet you, I know it. Iruka smiled and ruffled the teen's hair, once again ignoring the wince. He would do everything he could to get Harry used to non-painful contact. Harry slowly smiled and nodded. Welcome to Konoha, Yumino Hiroshi. Tsunade smiled at the group. I'll have the paperwork done. Now get out of here and get him some clothes that fit. Harry, now legally Hiroshi, collapsed on the couch much to his companion's amusement. It had been nearly 5 hours since they had left the Hokage Tower and they had finally finished shopping. He was now the proud owner of a wardrobe that actually fit, as well as several books and other things that had caught his interest. They had also picked up a few bits of furniture to personalize his new room. All in all, it had been a very productive, if tiring day. The leftover money had been put in a bank account under his name for the future so that he wouldn't be totally dependent on Iruka. Hey. I just got out of hospital, give me a break. The teen grumbled. Well, as fun as today has been, I need to go. See you around, Hiroshi, Iruka-sensei. Aye, thanks Kakashi. Hiroshi waved tiredly. Thank you for your help, Kakashi-sensei. Iruka said politely and then the jounin was gone. So how long have you two been together? Iruka froze at the innocent question and turned to see the genuine curiosity on his cousin's face. What gave you the idea we're together? Iruka stammered out, nervous. I can just tell. Hiroshi shrugged and pushed himself off the couch, gathering the shopping bags. Hiroshi, you can't tell anyone. Please. He's a jounin and I'm just a chunin instructor. We have to act as comrades only anywhere in public, even if it seems like we're alone. We can't be caught. Iruka explained, not wanting to beg. Hiroshi smiled and nodded. I won't tell anyone, I promise. With that he disappeared into his room to put away his new belongings before dinner. He smiled as he hung up his new shirts. It looked like life here would be good and without the life of Harry Potter intruding. Anyone who managed to get this far would never find him because Harry Potter didn't exist here. TBC. Chapter 7. Hiroshi wandered the streets aimlessly, getting a feel for his new home. Everything was so different to what he was used to, even in the wizarding world. Seeing people running across the rooftops had definitely been an eye-opener. Iruka had left that morning for school after giving him a key to the house and directions to the academy if he needed to find his cousin. He smiled as he found a library and walked up the stairs, if only Hermione could see him now. He needed to learn as much as he could about this strange place, his home for the foreseeable future, and he couldn't rely solely on Iruka for that information. Hence the library. The building was larger than Hogwarts Library and felt far more modern to his relief. He strolled through the aisles of scrolls and books aimlessly, getting a feel for the place and silently observing the other patrons. There were quite a few shinobi as well as civilians going about their business and ignoring each other's presence for the most part. Can I help you, young man? Harry started and spun around to find a rather amused-looking older woman watching him. He forced his heart rate back to something approaching normal and smiled. Yes please ma'am. I am interested in history, especially that of Konoha. He fought the urge to fidget as the woman studied him. I've never seen you here before. She stated and Hiroshi could feel a few shinobi drift closer. No ma'am. I just moved here to live with my cousin. He answered truthfully. Really? Welcome to Konoha. Imino Hiroshi. He gave a polite bow and the woman smiled. I didn't know Iruka-sensei had any family. I'm all that's left. We're actually second cousins, his aunt was my grandmother. My guardians died recently and Haddock-san was kind enough to escort me to Konoha. That's why I'm in here. I want to learn as much as I can about my new home. Hiroshi smiled brightly at the librarian. The woman smiled back and beckoned for him to follow her, the shinobi drifting away again, although several shot interested looks at him as they did. Ibiki moved to the side as an angry mother darted past after her son and promptly collided with something soft. He didn't even stagger from the impact but looked down as he heard a thud and the sound of someone exhaling in shock. Sprawled at his feet was a dark-haired teen looking up at him a bit dazed. The boy was familiar, but he wasn't sure why. Reaching down he helped the teen up and went to continue walking. You know it's polite to say sorry when you knock someone over. Ibiki stopped, stunned as the teen spoke. He turned back to see flashing green eyes and then realized why the boy was familiar. He stared at the teenager and raised an eyebrow. Very few people would talk like that to him even not knowing his position. His appearance was rather daunting, but Iruka's cousin hadn't flinched in the slightest. Ibiki could see the gathering crowd, all gawking at the teen in shock. Emerald eyes flickered from him to the crowd and the slightest of smirks touched the teen's lips, just enough for him to see but no one else. True, but you did walk into me. Ibiki countered, finding himself enjoying their little encounter. Why should I tell you my name when I don't know yours? The teen asked almost cheekily. Morino Ibiki, Special Jounin. He answered, deciding to humor the kid. He was surprised to see him wandering the village alone, but Iruka did have to teach. Imino Hiroshi. And you walked into me, not the other way around. The teen once again countered. Ibiki felt a flash of surprise at the name, but it made sense, the one he had given Kakashi would stand out a lot. Well Rashi, I suggest watching where you're going from now. With that he walked off, smirking smugly. Rashi? Hey, get back here. The teen yelled indignantly, causing the crowd to laugh as they dispersed. To Ibiki's surprise the teen caught up to him again and simply walked beside him, studying him openly. What? You still haven't apologized. Hiroshi stated simply, but there was a mischievous look in his eyes. You're not going to give up, are you? Ibiki asked, amused by the teen's actions. He didn't trust the kid, not with the little they knew about him, but he was interesting and so far harmless, at least to them. Nope. Hiroshi flashed him a smile, clearly enjoying himself, something that Ibiki found odd but also nice. He was used to people being nervous around him, but he couldn't sense any fear in the teen. Green eyes stared at him for a few seconds before Hiroshi smiled widely. You're not that scary, Morino-san. Ibiki blinked, remembering what Kakashi had told them and blanked his thoughts. Hiroshi chuckled softly. I wasn't reading you, sir, I could see it in your eyes. I meant to be scary, kid, it's my job. So? Be scary at work and be yourself everywhere else. Hiroshi shrugged. You're one weird kid. He commented, making the teen laugh. You're hardly the first to say that. Don't suppose you know the way to Iruka's house from here? I think I'm lost. Ibiki pointed him in the right direction. Thanks, nice meeting you even if you still haven't apologized. With that Hiroshi took off towards Iruka's, leaving behind a very amused interrogation expert. He'd heard about the teen's reaction to the Anbu guards and how he had reacted to Iruka seeing his scars, and yet the teen he had just met seemed completely different. But so did the teen Kakashi had described. It seemed that Harry, now Hiroshi, was a puzzle. The teen had been playing with him, not really serious about an apology, but just having fun and seeing how far he would let it go. But why test his reactions to his playful banter and not someone less intimidating? Or was it because he was intimidating? Shaking those thoughts away he continued walking towards the Hokage Tower. Hiroshi shifted nervously as he heard the front door open. He hoped his cousin liked his surprise, but he wasn't sure he would. But it was the only thing he could think of doing to say thanks. Hiroshi? You home? He smiled as Iruka called out to him. In the kitchen. He answered. He waited as his cousin entered the room, arms full of paperwork, only to stop and stare at the table. I made Naruto say thank you. I hope it's okay. A lot of it is recipes from England since I don't know much about your food. I think you like it. Harry babbled nervously. Iruka looked over at him and smiled. It smells delicious and I'm sure it will taste just as good. Mind naming it as we go? I'll just wash up and then we can eat. Iruka put the papers down and then moved to leave the kitchen but gave Hiroshi's shoulder a gentle squeeze as he passed. So what did you do today? I hope you weren't too bored. Iruka asked as they ate. The meal was truly delicious, even if he didn't recognize more than half of the dishes. I had fun. I found a library and spent several hours there reading up on Konoha's history. Even had a fun run-in with a shinobi. Hiroshi smiled at the memory of the teasing conversation. Really? Who? Morino Ibiki. Hiroshi raised an eyebrow as his cousin began choking. What's wrong? The fun run-in. He didn't scare you or anything, did he? Nope. He ran into me and knocked me over, but it was an accident and he helped me back up. Never apologized though, so I bugged him. He seemed to be enjoying himself as much as I was and he told me how to get back here since I was lost. Hiroshi shrugged as he took a bite of his shepherd's pie. He completely ignored Iruka's incredulous look as he continued to eat. He didn't scare you at all. Most ninja are nervous around him. Iruka commented, mentally admitting that he was one of them, although not as bad as many were. Hiroshi's hand brushed at the scar on his forehead before he dropped his hand. I've seen a lot scarier. The teen said quietly and they ate the rest of the meal in silence. DBC. Chapter 8. Hiro, you home? And here Iruka. The teen called and Iruka walked down the hall to Hiroshi's bedroom. Did you need something? Hiro asked, looking up at the door from the scroll he'd been studying. Actually, I was going to ask if you'd like to come with me when I take my class camping next week. There's a genin team going too, so it'd give you the chance to get to know some people closer to your age. Iruka told him as he leant against the doorframe. Camping? He thought about it. He'd never been camping before. It could be fun. Okay, what do I need? Clothes. You don't mind getting dirty mainly. You'll share a tent and food is provided. I'll show you what to take later and lend you a pack. Okay. Hiroshi smiled as he looked around the academy yard as parents tried to make sure their children had everything. He felt a stab of pain but pushed it away. There was no point wasting time on what if. The class of 10-year-olds was excited to be going on the trip, making them difficult to handle. He laughed softly as he saw Iruka trying to break up a fight unsuccessfully. Yo. He grinned and looked up into the tree. Here to see us off, Kakashi? The ninja dropped to stand beside him. Of course. Here. He handed Hiroshi a small package. What's this? You need a way to defend yourself if anything happens. Not that it should, it's extremely rare for anything to go wrong on these trips, but Kakashi shrugged and Hiroshi unwrapped the package to reveal a sheathed knife. He looked up at Kakashi in surprise. You've used a sword before, knife's got a similar grip but without the reach. Sheath ties around your thigh or calf depending on which you prefer. If you don't want it to be seen you can put it under your pants and slit your pocket. You put your hand in your pocket and come out with a knife. Kakashi explained. Harry unlaced his boot and secured the sheath before putting his boot back on and taking a few steps to make sure it was comfortable. Thanks. When you get back I'll give you lessons on how to really use it if you want. Sounds good. Kakashi nodded and vanished. Hiro. He looked around at his cousins all before spotting him and jogging over. This is the team coming with us. The team sensei Yuhi Kurenai. This is Abiram Shino, Inyazuka Kiba, his partner Akamaru and Hyuga Hinata. Teammate, this is my cousin, Yumino Hiroshi. Hiroshi smiled and bowed slightly in greeting. It's a pleasure to meet you. It's nice to finally meet you too, Hiroshi. Kurenai said, smiling, and her team nodded. Now that you're here we should round up the kids and get started. Hinata watched as a figure staggered from one of the tents to retch into the bushes. Worried she left her post and approached, recognizing Iruka-sensei's cousin as she got closer. Are you alright, Yumino-san? He jumped, eyes wide and breath ragged. Now really worried she stepped closer, but he stumbled back. Should I get Iruka-sensei? He didn't answer and Hinata reached out to touch his arm. Hiroshi screamed and threw himself away from her. In an instant the rest of her team and Iruka were out of their tents and ready to fight. Hinata. Kurenai called out. It's Yumino-san. She answered and Iruka ran over. Hiro? It's okay, it's just me. I won't hurt you. He soothed as he knelt in front of the terrified teen. Iruka? Could you please check on the children, Kurenai? They may have been scared by his scream. Is everything alright? She looked at the pale, shaking teen in concern. Looks like another nightmare, we'll be okay. She nodded and directed her team to check on the students. Iruka slowly pulled Hiroshi into his arms, soothing him gently. He wished Hiro would talk about the dreams, but the teen refused and they had become less frequent over the last 2 months. Iruka. He looked down and smiled at the groggy teenager. It's okay, Hiro. He kept smiling even though he doubted Hiro could see much in the dark. The teen looked around and noticed the movement around the camp. Sorry. Hiroshi ducked his head. Don't be. Do you want to swap tents and stay with me? Hiro shook his head. I'll be okay. You sure? Hiroshi nodded. Okay. He stood and helped his cousin up, moving towards the fire. Teammate looked over at them and Hiro looked away, embarrassed. Sorry for waking you. He apologized softly. It's no problem, Hiroshi. Kurenai assured him. It was time for Kiba to take watch anyway. Are you alright, no Yumino-san? Hinata asked quietly and Hiro nodded. Call me Hiroshi or Hiro please. She smiled and nodded. He took the mug Iruka handed him and sipped the tea, sighing as it helped settle his stomach. Hiroshi laughed as he splashed and played in the river with the students. Kiba grinned as he dunked him and then yelped as Hiro pulled him under as well. The two teens surfaced laughing. Hiro was really enjoying the chance to act his age. Iruka smiled as he watched them play. Kurenai walked over from the camp and sat beside him to watch. "I've never seen him this happy and well childlike before," he said softly. "His eyes are too old for his age." She commented, "I never knew you had any living family." "Neither did I till Hiro showed up. My aunt left Konoha years before I was born and was never heard from again. After his family were killed he came looking for me." "Did he see them die? Is that why he has nightmares?" "He was in town when it happened, got home to find the house no longer standing. He doesn't talk much about anything before coming to Konoha, but I know my cousin and her family never wanted to take him in after his parents died. It's hard, I want to help but he won't let me in. Give it time. If the rest of the family didn't want him he could be having trouble adjusting to the fact that you do. Maybe. It's just Kakashi and Tsunade-sama know more about my own cousin than I do, and no one will tell me anything." He sighed, watching as Hiro and three of the children tackled Kiba, laughing the whole time. Hiroshi sat on the floor of his room, relaxing as much as he could. He closed his eyes and focused on his magic, trying to find it. He hated being helpless without his wand, which was still in sound if it hadn't been destroyed. He knew wandless magic was possible, he'd done it himself a few times and seen Dumbledore and Voldemort use it too. But it was very draining to do so. Nevertheless he was determined to learn, he would not be left with only a knife for defense if attacked. Bispillo watched her master from her place in the sun on his desk. She could feel the power flowing around and through him. It was different to the type used by her old master, and the humans here used, older and more comforting, at least to her. She hissed as it reached out to twine around her as well. Suddenly she could feel what her master felt and could feel where he was without using her senses. "Dollar Harry dollar," she hissed, gaining his attention. "Dollar, what is it best dollar?" he asked as he blinked. "Dollar, something happened, I can feel you dollar." Hiroshi's eyes widened in surprise. She could feel him. He thought about it and then smiled, somehow he'd accidentally bonded Vess as his familiar. Hedwig would not be happy with him having another familiar, but hopefully she'd accept it, eventually. Pity there wasn't a wand maker around since using a part of your familiar was meant to make the bond between your wand and magic stronger. "Hello Hiroshi." He turned and smiled. "Hey Hinata, day off?" He fell into step beside her. "Yes, Kurenai-sensei has a mission. Care to join me for lunch then?" Iruka had to work at the mission's office today. "I'm meeting the other rookies for lunch." "Okay." Hiro shrugged, a little lonely, but he'd find something to do. "They wouldn't mind if you came. They've been wanting to meet you." She continued softly. "Lead on." Hinata giggled as he offered his arm but took it, leading him to Choji's favorite barbecue restaurant. "Hey Hinata, over here." "Hiroshi. Grab a seat." Kiba yelled as he spotted them. "Guys, this is Yumino Hiroshi, Iruka-sensei's cousin." Kiba told the rest of the group. "Yo, you already know our team. That's Nara Shikamaru, Akamichi Choji, Yamanaka Ino and Haruno Sakura. Nice to meet you all. Team 9 were meant to be here too, but they got a last-minute mission." Sakura told them. Hiro sat back and let their chatter wash over him. It was nice being with people nearly his age, but they still didn't really have anything in common. "Hey Hiroshi, how old are you?" Ino asked and he blinked in surprise. 16. "No way. You're 2 years older than us. No offense but you don't look it." Kiba said and Hiro shrugged. "Iruka's the tallest family member I've seen. Well, there wasn't always a lot to eat when I was little." He added softly and Sakura nodded. "The lack of proper food at a young age would have stunted your growth." He looked at her, curious and she blushed slightly. "Sorry, I'm training as a Medicnan." "Sounds interesting." Hiroshi smiled at her. "So you're not a ninja?" Ino asked. "No, there weren't any ninja villages around and my family needed the help on the farm." He lied. "So you don't know anything about fighting?" She asked in surprise, he was different to most of the boys she knew in that case. "Not really, other than the normal tussling boys tend to do. Though my cousin was several times my size, so those fights were more than a little uneven." He grimaced slightly, remembering all the injuries Dudley had given him over the years. "How do you like Konoha so far?" Sakura asked, catching his expression. "It's different. Got the shock of my life the first time I saw people running across the rooftops. They all laughed at that. I like it. I've been spending a bit of time at the library, learning what I can." "Want to know anything book-wise?" asked Sakura. Ino teased, making Sakura blush again, and Hiro smiled ever so slightly. Seemed there was a Hermione in every group. Hiroshi politely thanked the waitress that delivered the food and dug in with the others. He excused himself an hour later and began leaving the restaurant. "Hey Hiro." He turned back. "We usually get together once a week, you're welcome to join us." Kiba called out and Hiroshi nodded and waved. They were a good group, friendly and loyal though he could see it in their eyes, someone had betrayed them. DBC. Chapter 9. Kakashi smiled as Hiro scrambled back to his feet. The teen was a fast learner, but his past malnourishment slowed his progress. He was beginning to put on weight now, and he could see some firmer muscle developing now that he had started teaching him to defend himself. One thing he seemed to share in common with Kakashi's blonde student was his ability to take a hit and get back up. Neither teen seemed to know the meaning of few-word quit. Of course, from what Hiroshi had told him, if he had ever quit then he would be dead. That was part of the reason he wanted the teen to know how to fight. He doubted Hiro's past would stay in the past, and the youngest Yumino would need every advantage he could get. He wondered idly if he could get the Hokage to agree to having Hiroshi fully trained as a ninja. He winced. He had the feeling if he did Iruka's blow up at the Chunin exam meeting would seem minor compared to what he'd do if he found out his lover wanted his cousin to be a ninja. But Iruka didn't know the full story behind Hiroshi's appearance in the elemental countries. Break for now. He called and Hiro nodded and sat beneath a tree. Kakashi joined him and they both sipped from Canteen's. Mind if I ask something? Go ahead. Hiro said, breathing heavily. Why haven't you told Iruka? Kakashi felt Hiro tense beside him and frowned slightly. Told him what? Hiro asked softly. The truth about your past. Kakashi said, making sure Hiro couldn't purposely misunderstand him. The teen looked away. Staring off into the trees, whole body tense. He doesn't need to know. Hiro stated coolly. Doesn't he? And if that past finds you here? What then? If it does I'll deal with it. I won't let them hurt him. Harry growled. And you don't think learning about it that way will hurt him? Kakashi sighed. He cares about you, Harry, all he wants to do is help you, but you keep everyone at arm's length. Emerald eyes widened in shock at the use of the name he had given up upon moving to Konoha, but then narrowed slightly. He can't get involved and he'll want to if he knows. I won't lose him too. He stated fiercely, hands clenched into fists. Kakashi shifted slightly as he noticed the wind picking up unnaturally, realizing it was due to Hiro's emotions. He is a ninja hero, he can take care of himself. Kakashi said. My father and godfather were Aurors, didn't stop them dying because of me. Hiro told him bitterly. True, but it was their choice. You're not giving Iruka a choice, Hiro. Isn't it more dangerous leaving him ignorant? What if they show up looking for you? Iruka would have no idea what to expect. That would get him killed a lot quicker than knowing what to expect. Hiro swallowed and stared stubbornly at the ground. Is there another reason? Kakashi trailed off as he remembered the little Hiro had told them of his other relatives. He won't turn his back on you because you're a wizard. Let's just say no one would blame him for hating Naruto, and yet he cares for him as if he were his brother or son. Iruka is one of the most caring people I know. Magic won't change that. Kakashi moved ever so slightly so that they were just touching. He could feel the tension and fear in the way Hiro held himself and groaned mentally. If anyone saw what he was about to do, it would completely ruin his reputation of being distant towards everyone. Moving quickly, he grabbed the teen and pulled him into his arms, hugging him tightly. Hiro struggled against him for a bit before finally going limp, silent tears falling from his eyes. Iruka looked up and smiled as his cousin entered the room, but his smile faded quickly as he got a look at the teen's face. He was on his feet and across the room in seconds to kneel beside the teen. Hiro? What happened? Are you alright? He searched for wounds but couldn't find any, much to his relief. Hiro nodded slowly, staring at the ground. Hiro. He's right. It's not fair to you. Hiro whispered. Who's right? Iruka asked in confusion. Kakashi. Hiro still refused to look at him. Iruka sighed and grasped his arm, pulling him towards the couch and then gently pushing him down onto it, taking a seat next to him. What did Kakashi say to you? You know to ignore most of what that idiot says. Iruka smiled and brushed Hiro's hair out of his eyes. But he was right. It isn't fair to keep it from you. Keep what from me? My past. Iruka blinked in surprise but didn't say anything. Letting Hiro say what he wanted to. Iruka relaxed back into familiar arms but continued to watch Hiro as he slept the most peaceful sleep Iruka had ever seen him have. He turned his head enough to give Kakashi a soft kiss before pulling out of his hold and walking to his own bedroom. You okay? Kakashi asked softly as he shut the bedroom door. He moved quickly to Iruka's side as he saw the unshed tears in his lover's eyes. Who's been through so much? Kakashi wrapped the smaller man in his arms and just held him as silent tears fell. He's strong, a lot stronger than he looks, rather like a certain cousin of his. Kakashi smiled and wiped the tears from Iruka's face. Iruka smiled slightly at that. Do you really think they'll find him here? Maybe. But if they do, they'll have to get through us first. Plus he seems to be making friends with the rookies and they won't just stand by either. We won't them take him, I promise. Kakashi assured him. Iruka nodded and smiled again before moving to kiss Kakashi. The Jounin smiled and pushed Haruka down onto the bed. Hiro slowly let his breath out and opened his eyes. He smiled as he let his magic slip from his conscious grip and then stood, brushing his clothes off. He stretched before grabbing his jacket and moving to leave the clearing he had spent the last 4 hours in. Between his own studies and Kakashi's self-defense training, he didn't get to meditate on his magic as much as he'd like, but at least it was easier in the clearing than back at the house. Though the atmosphere back home had been a lot lighter the last 2 weeks, ever since he had taken Kakashi's advice and told Haruka the truth about his past and their family. Haruka had been shocked and horrified by the way he had been treated, but he hadn't pushed Hiro away. And for that he would be forever grateful. He headed home but then paused as a distant sound caught his attention. Cursing his curiosity since it had a tendency to get him into trouble, he changed direction and headed towards the noise. He crouched behind a bush and watched as a teen dressed in the most awful green spandex he'd ever seen, repeatedly punched a pole. He shook his head in amusement at the younger male's attire, but had to admire his commitment to training as he looked around the clearing. Deciding not to bother the other male, he went to leave only to freeze at the feel of cold metal against his throat. "Keep your hands still." A cold voice said in his ear, "Stand up." Hiro stood slowly and then moved into the clearing as his captor pushed him. The teen he'd been watching stopped training to stare at him. "Who are you and what are you doing here?" Hiro swallowed but made himself relax. "Imi no Hiroshi, I heard a noise and was curious. Do you mind letting me go?" "Imi no?" the voice questioned. "Haruka is my cousin, I moved to Konoha 3 months ago. Will you let me go?" "Let him go, Niji." Hiro smiled as he was released. "Nice timing, Kakashi," he said, moving away from his captor. "Yes, well, I hate to think what Haruka would do to me if anything happened to you. For a teacher he's scary." Kakashi grinned behind his mask and Hiroshi shook his head in amusement. Hiroshi walked over to Kakashi's side and finally got a look at the person that had so recently been threatening his life. Obviously related to Hinata in some way with the same wide eyes and dark hair, but his was a lot longer than hers. Where Hinata was quiet and shy, this teen held himself arrogantly and his face was cold. "Why are you okay, Hiro-kun?" Kakashi asked. "Fine." One hand went to his throat where the kunai had rested only moments before and he was glad to find it hadn't even broken the skin. "Are you really related to Haruka-sensei?" the one in green asked, eyes wide. Hiro couldn't help but stare for a moment before nodding. "Of course, Team 9 has been on a mission. Yumi no Hiroshi meet half of Team 9, Rock Lee and Hyuga Niji. Hinata is his cousin." Kakashi explained and Hiro smiled, though it was a little shaky. "Pleased to meet you." He turned back to Kakashi. "I should get home, it's my night to make dinner." With that he left the clearing, able to feel cool eyes watching his every move. "You look a bit shaky," Haruka commented as they ate. "Had a run-in with Team 9 that ended with a kunai at my throat." "What?" Haruka had paled at that. He had a pretty good idea who had been holding said kunai too. "I heard a noise and was curious. Next time I think I'll keep walking." Kakashi showed up so everything was okay. "It was Hyuga Niji, wasn't it?" "Yeah. But he didn't hurt me, not even a scratch." Hiro shrugged, standing to wash the dishes. "Hey Kakashi, there's leftovers in the fridge if you want them." Hiro said, startling Haruka. "How is it you can tell when I'm around and yet Niji snuck up on you?" the Jounin asked as he got the plate of food out after kissing Haruka hello. Hiro shrugged as he dried the dishes. "I know you, plus I was distracted by the weird outfit Roxanne was wearing." At that both Kakashi and Haruka laughed. "Wait till you meet his sensei." Looking between the two men, Hiro shuddered. "I get the feeling I don't want to." Night. TBC. Chapter 10. Hiroshi grinned as he all but danced around his clearing. He could hear Vespilo's amused hissing from a nearby tree branch, but honestly didn't care how much of an idiot he looked at the moment. He'd done it. Still giddy with success, he held out his hand, aiming at a fallen branch. "Wingardium Leviosa," he said, and the branch began to rise up. He knew he was grinning like an idiot, but hey. Who wouldn't be if after 4.5 months they'd finally managed a spell? "Wandlessly, come on Ves, let's head home, I think I should cook Haruka dinner tonight," he told his familiar, still grinning. The snake hissed her agreement and headed off through the trees. Having energy to burn, Hiro took off at a flat-out run towards home. Haruka couldn't help but stare at the sight that greeted him when he got home that night. "Hiro?" he called and nearly jumped as his cousin seemed to appear out of nowhere. "Yeah? Are we having people over for dinner?" Haruka asked cautiously, eyeing the heavily burdened table. "Nope, just us," Hiro answered as he put the last of the food on the table. Hiro looked at the table and then blushed. "Oops. So what has you in such a good mood?" Haruka suddenly wanted to run as he saw the mischievous smirk that suddenly appeared on Hiro's face. Kakashi froze for a split second on the doorstep as a terrified shriek reached him. "Hiroshi, put me down." He kicked the door in and tore into the house, only to stop and stare in disbelief at the sight that greeted him. Seeing Iruka flailing around in midair, he couldn't help his next reaction. Hiro nearly dropped his cousin as the sound of someone laughing their head off reached him. Turning quickly, he grinned at Kakashi before gently lowering Iruka back to the floor. "Hey Kakashi, want to stay for dinner?" Hiro asked happily and Kakashi blinked. Well, it was more like a wink at the sight of all the food on the table. Hiro gave a small nervous laugh. "I felt like cooking." He shrugged. "For what army?" Kakashi asked as he went to put the front door back where it belonged. I don't know why I cook that much really. I just started and this happened." Hiro blushed and the two men laughed at him. "I've never seen Hiro like that," Kakashi said later that night. Iruka smiled and cuddled closer. "The closest I've seen was on the camping trip when he was playing with the students in Kiba. He's really happy to finally be making headway with his magic." "I think I know why," Kakashi said softly, wrapping his arms tighter around Iruka. It wasn't often they just got to cuddle like this, and Kakashi knew he'd have to leave in a few hours, but it felt so good. It's because he's been defenseless. Without a wand and easy access to his magic, he's had to rely on others for safety, something he's not used to. On top of that, he'd seen his godfather die, came home to find said home gone, and then spent time as a priest. Forget that last bit. He's had it very rough and for his people has been all but defenseless even with the training I've been giving him. But now he's found a way to tap into his magic again. Sure, it's going to take him time to figure out how to use it efficiently and all, but it is a start. I think we're going to be in for an interesting time as his confidence grows." Kakashi chuckled and Iruka smiled. "Could be interesting. I'm just glad he's finally happier. Still, that doesn't explain some of the looks you've been giving him lately." "It's nothing. Absolutely nothing," Kakashi insisted quickly, a little too quickly. Kakashi, Iruka growled and his lover swallowed. "It was just a passing thought and also please don't kill me. And I'm not going to suggest it or anything. Kakashi, just tell me." "Okay, so it crossed my mind that seeing if he could be trained as a ninja would give him a better chance against the other wizards, but it was just a passing thought, I swear." Iruka went silent and still Iruka. Kakashi asked nervously, ready to be yelled at, kicked out or even killed due to one protective chunin, but to his surprise Iruka wrapped his arms around him tightly and buried his head in his chest. "Iruka, love. I hate it, but you're right." His lover's answer shocked him, but he didn't say anything, just hugged him. He thought of Hiroshi as a ninja scares me, he's already been through so much, but it would give him an edge against other wizards. "I'll talk to him about it tomorrow during training," Kakashi said and Iruka nodded before moving to kiss him softly. "Kakashi?" Iruka looked at the other shinobi worriedly. Though his face was covered as usual, Iruka could still see the surprise and shock on his lover's face. "He said no." Iruka blinked. "What, Hiro said no to the training?" Kakashi said and Iruka felt something inside relax, even though his cousin's answer confused him. "Did he say why?" Iruka asked, curious about Hiro's reasons. "He said that he is going to fight them as a wizard when the time comes and not as anything else." Kakashi shrugged, it was the teen's choice after all. But Iruka sighed and nodded, he knew Hiro had made his choice and there was nothing they could do to change his mind. Hiro laughed as he watched Kiba and Akamaru fooling around. He grinned at Hinata who was giggling shyly behind her hand. The whole of the rookie 9 that remained in the village plus Team Guy had gathered for their weekly get-together and Teammate had made it their mission to drag Hiro along, not that he had really complained about it. He had accepted Lee's rather exuberant apologies on behalf of his teammate for their last meeting, even while Niji himself simply stared coldly. Hiro honestly couldn't see how Hinata and Niji were related with their very different attitudes and personalities. It was nice that the younger teens wanted to include him in their activities, even if he just sat and watched as they sparred and had mock battles. One of the girls always sat out to keep him company, though he didn't mind watching alone. It was nice that they didn't want him to be. It was odd and very different to what he was used to where people only hung around him because of his fame. Hiro didn't regret turning down Kakashi's offer. He had enough blood on his hands already and he could see the shadows in these teens' eyes. Knowledge and memories no one their age should be forced to carry. He knew that one day he would have to go back, that one day he would have to face him, and only one of them would walk away from that fight, but when that day came it would be wizard versus wizard. Yes, he was meant to have the power the Dark Lord knew not, but something inside was telling him that being a shinobi wasn't it. So he would continue his self-defense lessons with Kakashi and his own magical training for now and enjoy the chance to be free for once. Because Hiro knew that it wouldn't last forever, they'd find him eventually. TBC. Chapter 11. Hiro stood facing Kakashi, hands empty and relaxed at his sides. The older man was holding a single kunai and for once not reading his book, instead his focus was locked on the teen. Suddenly Kakashi moved, hurtling towards Hiro, kunai raised. The teen dropped, rolling out of the way, his one hand coming up. Expelliarmus. Kakashi dodged the spell and came at him again Petrificus Totalis. This time the spell connected and Kakashi hit the ground, his body rigid. Hiro as instructed left the curse on to see if Kakashi could find a way to throw it off. It took a bit, but his body suddenly relaxed and then the older man was back on his feet. So it worked. Yeah. Took a lot though. Kakashi admitted. And I'm only technically a 5th-year student, they'll have more power behind their spells. Hiro warned him, sitting down since wandless magic was a lot more draining than if he had his wand. I want my wand back. He admitted. It makes that much of a difference? Kakashi asked, curious. Yeah, most people can't really do anything without one. It's exhausting and takes more focus and power. I'm putting almost 3 times more effort into these spells than I ever used to have to. Unfortunately I don't think I can summon something from that far away. Hiro shrugged and Kakashi nodded before offering him a rice bowl. We should drag Iruka out here for this. If he'll be a big target. I want to work on it for a while longer. Figure out if there's an easier way to throw off your spells. Iruka's good but his chakra stores are nowhere near mine. Hiro stood up, looking around for what had disturbed his meditation. He yelped as something dive-bombed him, hooting angrily. He froze and then smiled widely. Hedwig. Hey, stop it girl. I'm sorry. Will you stop it already? Hiro ducked and dodged as best he could as the irate bird continued to attack. He didn't blame her for being mad, but this was just ridiculous. Come on girl, let me explain. He pleaded. Finally, after nearly 10 minutes of merciless attacking, she stopped and settled on a branch just out of his reach, glaring down at him angrily. Hiro sighed but couldn't help smiling at his first real friend. He sat down at the base of her tree and settled in for a long talk, trying to calm his familiar down. I never meant to leave you behind, but everything happened so quickly. If I hadn't sent you to Mooney for the summer you would have died with the Dursleys. I spent the first few days here in a cell in another village. I don't want to even think what they would have done to you girl. I know you think you have to always look after me, but this way at least you were safe. Konoha has a great place. Hedwig and I have family here, real family. He doesn't care about magic or that I have a maniac after me. I know I have to go back one day, but for now I have a place to live and train in peace. You understand, don't you? He smiled as she gave a reluctant hoot, holding out his arm to her. The snowy owl flew down and walked up his arm to settle on his shoulder, preening his hair diligently. He laughed and gently stroked her feathers. I missed you too. What he failed to notice were the pale eyes watching the entire encounter. Hiro, why is there an owl in the lounge room? Hiro smiled at Iruka and held his arm out, Hedwig obediently flying over to rest on it. This is Hedwig, she was the very first gift I ever received. She finally tracked me down and was none too happy about being left behind. Someone gave you an owl? Iruka asked, not quite believing it. Then again, wizards seem to have a few weird customs. Yeah. We use them for delivering mail and they make great friends. Hiro explained, strolling the soft feathers. Hedwig, this is my cousin Iruka. He extended his arm towards Iruka who just stood there uncertainly. Hold out your arm. Slowly he did so and the owl moved to his arm and up to his shoulder. He jumped slightly as his ear was nipped before she settled into preening his hair. Hiroshi laughed at the sight, glad that Hedwig liked Iruka. He smiled as he thought of her meeting Kakashi, maybe she'd think he was a relative with his hair color. The thought of having her attack whenever Kakashi took out a certain book was very tempting. So where exactly is she staying? Iruka finally asked. My room. With Vess. Are you sure that's smart? Sure, they'll keep each other company. Aren't you worried about Vess eating Hedwig? Iruka looked at Hiro like he was crazy. I'd like to see her try, she'd more than likely get her eyes clawed out. Making a perch for her will give me the chance to practice transfiguration. Niji paused and then entered the clearing, watching the older teen closely, but he gave no sign that he knew the shinobi was there. He ducked as a white blur dove at him, and that got the youngest Yamino's attention. Hedwig, stop. He called and the blur, a white owl, settled onto a branch above the green-eyed teen. Sorry about that Niji, she can be a bit overprotective at times. Hiroshi smiled at him and stood up. Niji nodded stiffly, watching the other boy closely. He found the older teen puzzling. There were times when he would almost swear that Hiroshi was a shinobi with how silently he could move and the shadows he would glimpse in his eyes, and others when he was simply a teenager with a previously bad family life. Since they'd first met 3 months ago, Hiroshi had changed a bit physically, no longer looking unhealthily thin. He was beginning to fill out a bit and gaining some muscle definition as well, which Niji knew was from some light training courtesy of Kakashi. But after seeing him that day with the owl that had just attacked him, he had become even more intrigued. Because the other boy had been speaking a language he had never heard of before. That naturally made Niji suspicious of him. He'd learned from the others that not even Iruka had known of his existence until he had suddenly shown up claiming to be Iruka's cousin and that the rest of the family had just been killed. Hello? Niji focused on Hiroshi, mad at himself for getting that lost in thought. She? Yeah, Niji, this is Hedwig, my oldest friend. She got left behind the mess when I left home and caught up a few days ago. She's being a bit overprotective at the moment. Hiro stroked the soft feathers gently and then the bird moved to his arm and Niji stayed still as Hiroshi approached. Go on, she won't bite. Hiro smiled at him and Niji found himself petting the soft feathers, Hedwig soaking up the attention. He felt his lips turn up in small smile as he petted the white owl, making Hiro's smile widen. DBC. Chapter 12. Hiro reread the letter again. He'd read the thing so many times since Hedwig had brought it that the parchment was well creased and the ink already fading. But it was the last news he would have of his parents' world for a long time. He hadn't even noticed the slip of parchment attached to Hedwig's leg when she'd first arrived, he'd been too happy to have his first friend back with him to check. He hadn't even thought about the possibility of her carrying a message until later that night and had been happy to find Mooney's letter. Out of everyone in the outside he missed the remaining marauder the most. Remus was his last link to Sirius and his parents, and despite being fairly reliant on Dumbledore, the werewolf had at least never lied to him. But the bod of distance, okay, a lot of distance since he was several continents away, he had finally looked over his various relationships and come to several disappointing conclusions. 1. Ron was a jealous glory hound who stayed with him when things were good but always became intensely jealous when Harry received more attention, like in 4th year. As for Hermione, she was far too trusting when it came to those in authority. There were things he told her and only her that Dumbledore knew, meaning he couldn't trust her with any information, whether or not she had been a willing informant or not. It was possible that Dumbledore had simply found the information in her thoughts, but he couldn't take the chance. As for the headmaster himself, he was far too manipulative for anyone's good. From what he had learnt about Tom's time at Hogwarts, Albus had to at least have had some serious questions about the boy, and yet he had done nothing. And every year the old man gave him just enough for him to go running off to solve some mystery and stop Riddle. The only year that seemed semi out of his control was 4th when Cedric died. He had never trusted the ministry and never would unless it underwent a complete overhaul and all workers were subjected to Veritaserum. The whole place was just simply corrupt. Who takes money from a man found in Death Eater robes in the Dom attacking schoolchildren and then lets them walk free? Cornelius Fudge, that's who. Thanks to him Lucius Malfoy was free and was probably involved in the attack that killed the Dursleys. And now said minister had out a bounty out on him for murder. Brilliant. Lockhart would make a better minister than that idiot Fudge. They had tried to freeze his accounts only to find them empty, and while that had added to the suspicion on him, at least it kept Fudge from lining his pockets with his inheritance. He knew that if Fudge had his way he would never be able to return to England and remain a free man, so he had to be able to stand up to the ministry when he returned. Hiro sighed and put Remus's letter aside. He hadn't needed it to know going back now would be a bad idea, but it was nice to know the werewolf was looking out for him. He couldn't even answer the letter, too much chance of Hedwig being recognized and intercepted or tracked back home. At least he didn't blame him for running like so many would. He wondered what Remus would think of Iruka and his friends here in Konoha, not that he'd ever meet them, but still. Hiro still hoped that Remus would like them though. So where are we going? Kakashi looked down and smiled at the annoyed teen. He had to admit that training with the boy was the most fun he'd had since Team 7 fell apart, unless he counted time spent with said teen's older cousin. Of course, annoying this teen was a little more dangerous than annoying his old team had ever been. They'd only try to kill him. Hiro though would simply make his life a living nightmare. Could have thought that once Hiro had finally settled he would reveal a mischievous side to rival Iruka and Naruto's. And detecting pranks fueled by magic was a lot harder than anything Naruto had ever attempted to do to him. Well, he drawled, earning a glare. I have a mission, and we don't want your training to suffer without my guidance. Hiro snorted and Kakashi cuffed him lightly, smiling when the teen didn't flinch at all. Therefore I have arranged another teacher for you. Hiro blinked in shock as he stared around the training ground. Kakashi? Yes. You really don't like living, do you? Hiro glared at him as the training ground's occupants headed their way. My eternal rival. Hiro shot Kakashi a look that, if looks could kill, would have left the Jounin as a greasy little smear on the ground. Kakashi chuckled nervously before giving a lazy wave to Team 9. Hiro offered a polite smile to the team he knew the least out of the group that gathered weekly. But he had never met their sensei, till now. He knew why Iruka and Kakashi had been amused when he'd met Lee. Guy was at least 100 times worse. So this is Iruka sensei's youthful cousin. I am Mito Guy. Hiro's smile became stained as the man bellowed happily, his ears hurting. A pleasure to meet you. Hiro said politely. Guy has agreed to work with you while I'm gone. Kakashi told him with a smile, hiding a shiver of fear. He knew Hiro was going to get him back for this somehow, but he honestly believed Guy was the best choice. Hiro needed to be able to defend himself but refused to be trained as a ninja, leaving only hand-to-hand combat skills, and Guy was the best for those. "You're so dead, Haddock," Hiro muttered under his breath. "Yes, well, have fun." With that, Kakashi was gone. Iruka watched in concern as Hiro dragged himself down the hall towards his bedroom, not even seeming to notice the worried Chunin. Just who had Kakashi asked to take over the teen's training while he was gone? "Hiro? Are you okay?" He called out and his cousin paused, turning to look at him. "He's crazy," the boy answered tiredly. "Who?" Iruka frowned. "I hope you won't miss Kakashi, I'm going to kill him when he gets back." Iruka blinked at the matter-of-fact statement as Hiro shut his bedroom door. Guy. Kakashi had sent his cousin to Guy of all people for training. He might just help Hiroshi kill his lover when he returned. Then again, the training would be good for Hiro, hopefully it wouldn't kill him, and maybe he would rethink his decision on being trained as a ninja. As much as Iruka really didn't like the idea, it would make Hiro even more able to protect himself. And that was what mattered most. Niji watched as his sensei put Hiroshi through what should be classified as torture, especially considering the older teen wasn't a shinobi. But the green-eyed teen put up with it without a word of complaint. It was obvious he was being taught for a reason, but what was it? Yumino Hiroshi was an enigma, one he was no closer to working out than he had been when they first met. For a civilian, his skills were impressive, even if he didn't use chakra. Not that he couldn't have properly trained, unlikely, he definitely had it, and enough that training him wouldn't be too hard. And yet he was only being taught to fight hand to hand. Although he did carry a knife, a gift from Kakashi and Tenten was helping him truly master its use. There was something about Hiro that made it impossible for Niji to ignore him, and that annoyed him. The teen really wasn't anything special, so why the special treatment? Iruka ducked, just dodging a beam of red light coming from his cousin's hand. They'd been at it for 3 hours now, and both of them were exhausted but happy with their progress. Hiro's already good reflexes were steadily improving, and Iruka had managed to break 2 of the curses himself. Hiro's training over the last week with Guy had been going surprisingly well, even though the teen had come home half dead most days. So while there were no longer any plans to kill Kakashi, he was still going to receive some punishment for doing that to Hiro with no warning. At least the increased physical training was helping with his magic too, making it a little easier to use. Iruka groaned as he opened his eyes to see worried Green staring down at him. He sat up, Hiro hovering over him. He smiled at the teen to let him know he was okay and then pushed himself up to his feet. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Hiro. Thanks for waking me up." "Why didn't you dodge?" Hiro frowned. He knew Iruka should have been able to dodge that stunner. "Yes, I lost my concentration." Iruka admitted in embarrassment and Hiroshi nodded in understanding. Though neither had said anything, they were both worried about Kakashi, he was almost a week overdue. Hence their practice session, trying to keep from going mad with worry. "I'm sure he'll be fine. He's a famous ninja, right?" "You're right. He probably got distracted by a new book." Hiro snorted and rolled his eyes at the mention of the hated books. "Or he's helping a little old lady with her groceries." Iruka laughed. Hiro definitely knew his lover well. Hiro and Lee stepped apart as an Anbu appeared in the clearing, the rest of Team 9 also stopping their training. "Imino Hiroshi?" Hiro nodded. "Please report to the Hokage's office." The Anbu vanished and Hiro frowned. What could Tsunade want to see him for? "See you later then." Hiro jogged back towards the village. When he arrived, the secretary let him in, and he frowned as he saw his cousin standing in front of the Hokage's desk. "You wanted to see me, Tsunade-sama." Hiro stepped up to stand beside Iruka. "I thought the 2 of you deserved to be the first to know." Haddock Kakashi is being listed as missing in action. DBC. Chapter 13. "You're sending search parties after him, right?" Hiro asked, subtly casting a calming charm at his cousin, since he doubted the older man wanted his relationship outed because he lost it in the Hokage's office. He frowned as Tsunade stared down at her paperwork for a few seconds before looking up again. "No, we simply don't have the necessary resources or intelligence to risk it," she said stiffly, and Hiroshi actually growled at her. "If you don't have the information, then why the hell was he sent to wherever?" the teen bit out. Iruka, under the effects of Hiro's magic, was remaining remarkable calm from Tsunade's view since he'd just been informed one of his friends was missing, but she was more worried about Hiroshi's reaction since her sake glass was rattling dangerously on her desk. "To get said information. We don't know enough, so he was sent to gather intelligence. Obviously he was somehow compromised and caught or killed. I don't like it, but I can't risk anyone else, even to retrieve Kakashi," she replied angrily. Did the boy really think she liked abandoning Kakashi? Then again, from his previous experiences with those in authority, maybe he did. She sighed tiredly, she really hated telling people things like this, which is why she rarely did, usually it was a teammate, but since he was on a solo mission and she didn't want anyone else learning of Hiro's abilities if he reacted badly, she had to tell him herself. Where did you send him? What? Why? Because if you won't send him help I'll go after him. Hiro stated seriously. Iruka spun to face him, eyes wide. No way. You're no match for fully trained shinobi who will be trying to kill you Hiroshi. The Chunin argued. Hiro opened his mouth to argue, but Tsunade cut them both off. There are no ninja there. Iruka turned to her with a puzzled look while Hiro's face went blank and then turned to a look of horror. Tell me you didn't. He whispered hoarsely. Tsunade couldn't bring herself to meet his eyes. Where exactly did you send him? Hiroshi hissed out. Iruka's eyes widened in shock as he realized what they were saying. Your information proved that we have lost track of events outside. He was sent to several countries to gather up-to-date intelligence. Tsunade admitted. Where was he when you last received any communication? Hiro asked tensely. Romania. They stared in surprise as Hiroshi began openly swearing in several languages before Iruka hit him over the head. Watch your language. He barked automatically. Both shinobi exchanged worried looks as Hiro began laughing hysterically. Do you have any idea what you've done? He asked softly once he finally calmed down. Tsunade arched an eyebrow. Why you have condemned him to death? He whispered and Iruka paled. What? He asked and Hiroshi sent him an apologetic look. Romania has always been one of the darker countries and it's only gotten worse since Voldemort's rebirth. It is home to the largest and deadliest vampire and werewolf clans and has always been a haven for Death Eaters. I had a friend who used to work at the Dragon Reserve there. Used to because the month before I came here they were forced to flee for their lives. The country is now one of Voldemort's main bases. And you sent Kakashi there. I leave tonight. Hopefully I'll be back within the week with Kakashi, one way or the other. I won't leave his body there if it's too late. Hiro Iruka looked at his cousin and fell silent. He knew nothing he said would be able to change the teen's mind and it scared him. He'd in all likelihood already lost his lover, but to lose his cousin too. Hiroshi, you can't. Why not? I'm not one of your ninja, you can't order me not to. You've thrown him into my world. I'm the only one here with a chance of getting him out. If not for him I'd probably still be in that cell or worse, I won't abandon him. You've never seen what Death Eaters do to their captives, I have. And if they let the vampires or werewolves have him. Hiroshi closed his eyes. I will not leave him there. Emerald eyes snapped open in anger and pain. There is nothing that can be said to change your mind. Kakashi is an elite shinobi, he knew the risks. Hiro simply glared and shook his head. What do you plan to do? The goblins refused to take sides. I can go to them for some information. The rest I'll have to buy. With the extra training I've done here I should be able to take any wizards I run into. The hard part will be getting past any wards, vampires or werewolves, but it isn't impossible. He shrugged. I won't be able to make any definite plans till I get there and can look around. Tsunade stared at him before nodding slowly. How would having a team at your back change the odds? She asked carefully. They'd all have to be fast, vampires are many times faster and stronger than a civilian, and they'd still have a considerable advantage over most shinobi. Hiro told her. Then Team 9 will accompany you if you honestly believe the chances for success are over 55%. Then you better tell them to pack. He stated firmly. Okage-sama, I request permission to go too. Iruka stated firmly, making the other two look at him in surprise. I know I am only a chunin and an academy instructor, but Hiro has been teaching me how to fight against magic. Having another person with some experience along could make all the difference. Tsunade stared at him and he fought the urge to squirm. It isn't usually a good idea to send lovers on missions together or to retrieve each other. Add in the fact that the mission commander is your cousin and that makes it worse. If I allowed you to go, could you swear to maintain a proper shinobi attitude? You're not known for hiding your emotions, Iruka. He stared at her in shock. They'd been so careful, how had she known I'm the Hokage Iruka-kun? I know all. She smirked. You leave tomorrow night. I know you'd rather leave sooner, but the team needs to be fully briefed and shown why they should follow someone's orders when that person is a civilian in their eyes. Briefing will be at 11 am. I'll have my decision on whether or not Iruka will be a part of the team then. Either way you should come to the briefing to help explain. Dismissed. Hiro put his pack down against the wall, looking around to make sure he had everything he needed. Dollar, you'll keep him out of here till I return. Dollar. Yes Harry. Go now and be careful. I should be going with you. Vespillo answered, but he shook his head. No, you need to distract Iruka if he tries to come in here. Last thing I need is for him to panic over my disappearing. Are those things really important enough to risk it? The snake slithered over and he stroked her scales. If we're going to pull this off then yes. Don't worry, I'll be back before you know it. Vess didn't agree with that, but didn't say anything as her human disappeared with a soft pop. Hiro smiled as he looked around the clearing he and Kakashi had once stayed in briefly. Hopefully it was close enough for what he was going to attempt, since he really didn't want to risk getting any closer, despite how confident he had appeared in front of Vess. Closing his eyes he pictured the desired objects and then let his magic flow. "Achio," he whispered and then settled into wait. Hiro smiled at Team 9 as he slipped into the briefing room beside Iruka. "Hiro-san, are you okay?" Tenten asked and he smiled. "Just a little tired, I didn't sleep the best last night." She smiled and then caught sight of something shiny around his neck. "That's beautiful. Where did you get it?" Hiro fingered the choker absently. "Something from home I misplaced during the move, only just found it," he told her and Iruka frowned. "He didn't, did he?" "Hiroshi, what were you doing last night?" Iruka whispered. "Just packing." Hiro smiled and then turned as Tsunade entered the room. "Time to begin." BBC. Chapter 14. The ninja in the room snapped to attention as Tsunade entered, followed by Sakura. The pink-haired girl looked very surprised to see Hiroshi in the briefing room, but still smiled at him. "But everyone's here. Team 9 along with Yumino Hiroshi, Yumino Iruka and Haruno Sakura, you are being sent to retrieve Hada Kakashi, alive if possible. Iruka and Sakura will set up a temporary base for you to fall back to, since he probably won't be in good condition, correct Hiroshi?" Everyone turned to Hiro, all but Iruka in surprise. "As much as I hate to say it, by this time we'll be lucky if he's still alive with how long it's been since he last contacted you." The group looked between Hiro and Tsunade. The teen was glaring coldly at their leader, an expression they'd never seen on his face before. And what was even more surprising was Tsunade looking down slightly, as if feeling guilty for something. "As the mission will be in the outside, Hiroshi is in charge." "What?" Sakura looked at her mentor in confusion. "Why put Hiro in charge? He was a civilian from the mountains." "I'm sorry Sakura, but I've lied to you all. My birth name isn't even Yumino Hiroshi, though I am Iruka's cousin. I was born and raised outside, and I know the way the people who have Kakashi work." Hiro explained softly, unable to look at them. Iruka put a comforting hand on his shoulder, and the teen gave him a small smile. "How do you know that?" Niji asked coolly. "Because their leader has been trying to kill me since I was a baby. It's part of the reason I left when I found out about Iruka. I've been fighting them on and off since I was 11. But you didn't know how to fight till Kakashi-sensei started teaching you?" Sakura knew the others were just as confused as she was. Hiro held up his hand. "Lumos." They stared at his hand and the ball of light hovering above it. "You will not be fighting ninja, but wizards, vampires, werewolves and any other creatures that have been lured to their side. Magic is very real and capable of ending your lives before you can blink. Vampires are the undead, far faster and stronger than any human. Werewolves are fast and strong but aren't as dangerous except for the full moon. We will be going into a place where we are severely outnumbered and won't be able to trust anyone," Hiro explained. "I am placing Hiroshi in charge because of this, he knows the people and he knows the way they fight. Hopefully you'll be able to get in and out again without anyone being the wiser. But as I doubt that will happen, Team 9 has been chosen for their speed and combat skills. Hiroshi and Iruka will brief you on how to best fight a magical opponent en route. You are being sent to retrieve Kakashi, nothing more. You leave in 3 hours, dismissed." Hiro leant against a gate and stared up at the sky, ignoring Iruka who was leaning beside him and the guards who were nearby. He wasn't ready for this, he thought he'd have more time before having to face that world again, but as he told Tsunade he would not abandon Kakashi. The Jounin could have left him behind in sound, but it instead helped him escape and had even carried his half-dead body to Konoha for medical treatment after Vess had bitten him. Since then he had become a friend and in a way almost another cousin. He prayed that Kakashi would still be alive, sane and human when they got there, or else he would make them pay. He would not lose anyone else he cared about, not without a fight. He just wished he'd been able to retrieve his wand, but only his transfigured trunk had come to his summons, so he had to assume it had been destroyed. And so in separate vials he had a fang, venom and a scale from Vess, along with a wing and tail feather from Hedwig. While doing reconnaissance he planned to drop in on a wand maker so that he would be fully armed when it came time for the rescue. "You okay?" Iruka asked softly, snapping him out of his thoughts. "Yeah. How are you holding up?" He looked at his cousin in concern. "It wasn't every day that you found out your lover was being held by a bunch of powerful maniacs who had been trying to kill your cousin for years after all." "Okay, I guess. We've always known the risks of one of us never coming home," Iruka said softly. "He will come home if I have anything to say about it," Hiroshi promised firmly. "Do you have any ideas for where Sakura and I will wait?" That made Hiro smile softly. "Yeah, I know a place. I know you want to go all the way but..." It's okay, I know why the Hokage is having me wait, I'm too emotionally involved and could be a risk to the mission. I don't know, I always seem to do better when emotionally involved. He said, remembering how his desperation to save Sirius had led to the strongest patroness he'd ever managed. They fell silent as Neji joined them at the gates. Hiro could feel the Hyuga watching him, even with his eyes closed. If you want to say something then say it. Hiro said after several minutes of feeling Neji's gaze on him. While Hiroshi opened his eyes and met Niji's gaze. To protect myself and everyone here. With nothing to link this village to my old name, no one would come here looking for me. It was meant to be a fresh start. Till Tsunade decided to send Kakashi out without even thinking of asking which countries it might be a good idea to avoid. This Romania is that bad? Neji asked, wanting more information on their destination. What I know is a few months out of date, but yeah. We'll have to be very careful once we get there or we'll end up in cells next to Kakashi. Hiro told him. He smiled as Sakura and the rest of Team 9 joined them. Ready? How will you keep up with us? I didn't think you could run like we do. Sakura asked. I can't. Wait till we're further from the village. Sakura nodded but watched him curiously as they started walking. 15 minutes later they stopped. Anyone around? Neji checked and then shook his head. Good. They watched as Hiroshi pulled a bit of garbage from his pocket, Haruka's eyes widening. Is that what I think it is? He asked in surprise, knowing how much his cousin hated those things. Yeah, it's the quickest option. Hiro answered tightly. The piece of garbage? Tenten questioned. The porky actually. Everyone gather round and touch it. Don't let go. They followed his instructions. Ready? They all agreed and Hiro took a deep breath. Hope. With a familiar tugging sensation the group of 7 vanished from the hidden countries. Hiro ignored the shinobi as they sorted themselves out after their rather interesting landing, his attention fixed on the clearing ahead of them and the small house inside it. Stay here till I call for you. If I'm not back in 5 minutes the return code for the porky is got him. Hiro took a step only for Haruka to stop him. Hiro? The teen flashed him a smile and then slipped his cloak off, finally revealing what he was wearing. Having his trunk back was really coming in handy. He was dressed like any typical slightly rebellious wizarding teen. Black slightly baggy pants, a too tight green Quidditch t-shirt and dragon hide boots. Without his glasses, his hair now falling to his shoulders and with his scar hidden with makeup and a genjutsu courtesy of Tsunade, anyone watching the clearing would not think Harry Potter was there. He strolled across the clearing as if he hadn't a care in the world before knocking on the door. The ninja watched closely as a rather shabbily dressed man opened the door only to stare in Hiro in shock before giving a shout of joy and gathering him up in a tight hug. Remus grumbled as he got up and went to the door since the knocking wasn't stopping. He flung it open only to stare at the teenager on his doorstep. He blinked in surprise as he recognized the teen scent. Harry? He whispered. Hey Mooney. Harry answered softly but with genuine affection. The teen gasped as he grabbed him up in a hug, grinning like an idiot. What are you doing here? Where have you been? Like the new clothes though. Harry laughed. Thanks. As for everything else it's complicated. I'm here with some friends though, mind if we crash for a bit? Remus looked at him in concern, something was very wrong. Harry? What's going on? Please Remus, I'll explain I promise, but we need to get out of sight. He looked at Harry and then nodded. Thanks, back in a sec. Harry ran back towards the woods and then re-emerged with the oddest group he had ever seen, and that was saying something. Remus stepped back out of the doorway and smiled politely as the group entered, all watching him warily. How good are your wards? Good. Sirius had this place done by the goblins for me years ago for safety. Harry explanation, please. Harry motioned for his companions to sit, saying something in a language Remus didn't understand. Okay, so you know the Dursleys were killed. I came home to find the place a crater so I ended up at Gringotts. The goblins were very helpfully once they found out I was both the Potter and Blackhair. I emptied my accounts and then did some much needed shopping while under glamour. Anyhow, while I was gone the goblins were working up a family tree. To my shock it turns out that I still have living family and on Mum's side. Want to guess where my maternal grandmother was from? I get the feeling somewhere I'd never think of, so just tell me, cub. Remus noticed the small smile Harry gave him for that nickname. The hidden countries. Okay, he definitely wouldn't have guessed that one in a million years. He only knew about those countries because he was an utter bookworm as James had once called him. Then your companions. Yep. But why have you come back? There's a reward out on you, Harry, dead or alive. Because someone I have come to see his family has been captured in Romania. We're the rescue party. Remus collapsed heavily into the chair behind him. Romania, Harry, you can't be serious. Remus, would you do any differently if it were me or Sirius there? I will not abandon him, I can't. Remus sighed and dragged a hand through his hair. What do you need? Harry smiled and hugged him. Thank you. Harry pulled back and smiled at his honorary godfather first. Is there some sort of translation spell or something? This'll be a lot easier if we can all speak the same language. Remus nodded and pulled out his wand, making the shinobi tense and then relax when they saw it was a simple stick, except Iruka, who knew it was a wand. With a simple wave and some Latin, the spell was done. Well, now that everyone can understand each other, time for introductions. Everyone, this is my godfather Remus. Mooney, this is my cousin Iruka. With him are Guy, Niji, Lee, Tenten and Sakura. If it's okay, then Iruka and Sakura will stay here while the rest of us go to Romania to find Kakashi. We'll need medical supplies since they've had him a while, and anything necessary for a new vamp, just in case. Harry swallowed as he said that, not wanting Kakashi to have to go through that. Remus nodded in understanding. We're going to need as much up-to-date info as we can get to. I can get some from Order HQ, but the rest I'll take care of. Harry. I'll keep my hood up and a glamour on, I'm not suicidal. I know. Just don't get caught. Last thing I need is to have to try to break you out of Azkaban. Azkaban? Guy questioned. Wizarding prison. Harry answered shortly. The shinobi looked between the two wizards. Obviously Hero's real name was Harry, but why was Remus worried about him being put in prison? Seeing their looks, Harry sighed. My relatives were killed and the minister would rather pin it on me than chase after Death Eaters. Hence the price on my head. Which is why I'm not going to be looking for info in England. No one paid any attention to one more cloaked figure as they made their way through the crowds. Spying the shop he needed, the figure broke from the flow and entered, glaring at the little bell that signaled his arrival. May I help you, good sir? I need a wand and was told you could help me. Looking for something special then, The gnarled old man asked, rubbing his hands together in glee. Several vials were handed over along with some wood and a bag of gold. The old man studied the materials and the gold before grinning. Come back tomorrow and it'll be ready. Agreed. With that, the cloaked man apparated out. Harry lowered his hood and shook out his hair. Stupid of him to cast a cooling charm on the cloak, really. Now for the local branch of Gringotts, Joy. Remus watched the ninja curiously, especially the one Harry had called cousin. They were an odd bunch. Especially the two green-clad ones. Half the time he was tempted to take the translation charm off them, just so he wouldn't have to understand what they were saying. Watching it was bad enough. The boy Nejith, it had been embarrassing, but he honestly looked blind. The two girls were nice enough and a lot more normal seeming. And Irika appeared a nice man, if agitated, but it had been explained that he was a close friend of the man needing to be rescued, which was why he would be remaining behind with Sakura, who turned out to be the group's medic. Harry should be able to handle any quick on-site healing, leaving the heavier stuff for her on their return. He honestly didn't mind that his cottage had become base camp for a group of ninja and one wizard. He actually enjoyed the company and knew it would be lonely once they all left. But as much as he loved having Harry back, it simply wasn't safe for the team to remain. He had offered to go with them, give them another wizard, but they had declined, stating that teamwork would make up for things and as they had never worked with him before. Remus smiled as Iruka ran over to check Harry was okay as the teen apparated into the clearing. He already knew Harry wasn't bleeding since he couldn't smell any and he didn't have the familiar scent of fear around him, so he was probably okay. It was good to see Harry had some family that cared for him and that he felt he could open up to. He'd seen the signs in the teen's behavior back in third year, but Dumbledore had dismissed his concerns as nothing and Harry refused to talk about it, so he could do nothing. He knew the main group was leaving tonight and he would be lying if he said he wasn't scared, but he knew Harry, he always came through when the odds were against him. Harry smothered a laugh as he helped Lee with his cloak. The younger teen had been very disappointed to learn he couldn't wear green, but they wanted to blend in, not stand out a mile. Guy had been easier to make wear the wizarding clothes, but then again he was a jounin, no matter how weird he seemed. Honestly, Guy's team was not one he would have picked for stealth, but with the odds of them having to face vampires and the like, he had needed the fastest team. At least Tenten and Niji had simply accepted the clothes and gone off to change. In a way though, he was glad Lee was fussing, he needed the humor. Haruka and Sakura had a temporary medical room already set up and Remus had the secure room he used on nights of the full moon ready as well, although they were all praying that was unnecessary. He was carry a case of shrunken medical supplies in preparation of giving what first aid he could. Remus had run him through everything several times just to be safe. As well as that, he had the knife Kakashi had given him and his new wand. They were all armed and dressed to blend, in others' words they were as ready as they were going to get. Niji stayed close to Hero Harry. He honestly wasn't sure what to call the other teen anymore. Yes, this mission had solved many of the questions he had had about the youngest Yumino, but it had also raised new ones. Using the intelligence Remus and Hero had gathered, they had split into two groups and then gone to the places most likely to be holding Kakashi. For now though, they were sticking to the town since someone would have seen his capture. He was watching his team leader's back as he chatted with bar patrons, occasionally slipping one or two some gold coins to get their tongues wagging. Tenten was meant to be doing the same several towns away with Guy and Lee guarding her. Hopefully neither of his two usually spandex-clad teammates would do anything to break cover, they did not want to try rescuing 4 people. "What's wrong?" his companion whispered in Japanese. "You never said what name." Niji whispered back and Harry Hiro blinked. "Sorry. Hiro, the other one is too dangerous in this world." Niji nodded and Hiro went back to charming the patrons, which he was surprisingly good at. 20 minutes later they slipped from the bar and out into the cold night air, but Hiro was smiling beneath his hood. Got him. He grinned and Niji found himself giving a small smile in return. "Let's head back then." Hiro nodded and Niji put a hand on his arm. A second later there was a soft pop and they were gone. "Alas, we could find nothing on my eternal rival. What must he be suffering at the hands of these?" The door opened, thankfully cutting him off, to reveal a grinning Hiro and a less sour than usual Niji. "We found him," Hiro said, causing Guy and Lee to launch into their usual hugging with a sunset background, which Hiro still couldn't work out how they did. "Will you wait until tomorrow night or risk the daylight?" Remus asked as he handed the 2 team cups of tea. "There may be more chance of being spotted during the day, but it means they can't send the vampires out after us. Everyone get some sleep, we leave at 5 a.m. Hiro ordered and they dispersed to their sleeping bags, or in Sakura and Tenten's case Remus's spare bedroom with its double bed. Remus went into the kitchen to wash the dishes and wasn't all that surprised when he was joined. "Nervous cub? I've never led something like this before, Mooney. What if I screw up?" "You won't. You're a lot like your parents when it comes to these things, though before you were more like James. But you've planned this out like Lily used to, and you have the natural leadership skills of your father. They all have their individual skills, as do you, remember that and use them fully. Don't rush in but take the time to study the situation and you'll be fine," Remus assured him. "I've missed you, Mooney." "I've missed you too." Remus finished the dishes and drew the teen into a hug. "I'll always be here for you when you need me, you know that, right?" Harry nodded against his chest. "I almost came to you that day, but I didn't want to put you in any more danger. You're the only godfather I have and the last link to my parents. They would be so proud of you, Harry, serious too." Remus released him and grabbed a towel to help him finish drying the dishes. "I've been doing some shopping on your behalf." "Oh? Books and supplies for your further studies, plus a lot of our old Marauder things. There's even our notes on animagi in there, but please have a nurse or something supervise if you ever try to transform." "Thanks, Mooney, I will." Hiro pressed his face into the fabric in front of him. His disillusionment charms better hold up, or it wouldn't be the Death Eaters that killed him but embarrassment. He was clinging to Guy's back as they moved at top speed up the rock face and towards the towering fortress. There was no lack of fortresses and castles in Romania. If they made the vampires and werewolves play nice after the war, it could be a bustling tourist country. He smothered a relieved sigh as he was lowered to the ground and stepped away from Guy to study the wall. According to his information, there was a hidden entrance somewhere around here. "Niji?" He nodded and activated his eyes. "A meter to your right there's a tunnel through the wall." Hiro moved over and began tracing the wall, trying to find the actual opening. He grinned as it clicked open and the tunnel was revealed. "Anyone in it?" "Negative." "Let's go." Hiro led the way with Niji behind him to keep an eye out for enemies. "This should bring us out at the very bottom level. Cells start the level above and go for 3. We'll have to search each level as we go." The others nodded and they exited the tunnel once Niji gave the all clear. "There are 3 levels, we should split up," Tenten said. "How far can you see, Niji?" Hiro asked and Niji understood. He stared upwards, scanning the levels above them. "The first 2 levels are empty," he reported. Hiro nodded and headed for the stairs, beginning the climb. Halfway up Niji grabbed his arm and they froze. Then Hiro heard it, voices. He frowned since he didn't recognize the language, but they were coming this way and there was nowhere to hide when halfway up a staircase. "Trust me." Hiro nodded and forced himself not to tense as Niji's arms wrapped around him securely. The next thing he knew he was upside down and gripping Niji's arms very tightly. He noticed that Tenten had yanked Lee up with them and that guy was ready to kill the men if they noticed them hanging above their heads. Luckily they didn't look up, unfortunately that meant they had 2 enemies behind them. Hiro looked at Guy as the older man had more experience with this sort of thing. The Jounin nodded and threw 2 kunai, expertly aimed. The 2 men never felt a thing as they crumpled, dead before they hit the stairs. The group dropped back to the ground and quickly set the bodies rolling so that they would end up at the lowest level and hopefully remain undiscovered until they were long gone. Niji scanned the level above them and nodded. He'd found Kakashi, but there were also guards on this level. Hiro closed his eyes and focused on his magical senses, trying to get a feel for whether or not the guards were human. He grimaced as he felt the familiar presence of a werewolf. He pulled out a gift Remus had given him while wearing thick gloves, and Niji pushed the door open a crack, just enough for Hiro to throw the cylinder through. It shattered on impact, and the guard began choking as he inhaled the silver vapor. The other guards began calling to each other as Hiro shoved the door open and threw himself into a roll to avoid the incoming curses. He returned fire, giving the others a chance to get into the hall and fight back. Harry's last stunner caught the final guard just before he could hit the alarm, much to their relief. "Anyone hurt?" Hiro relaxed as they all replied in the negative. Searching the bodies he found the cell keys, while Tenten slit the stunned guard's throat, better not to leave anyone alive that could possibly identify them. "Which cell?" "End of the corridor on the left." Niji answered and they set off. As it turned out, Niji needn't have told them since it became obvious which cell he was in the closer they got. Hiro fought down the urge to be sick as the stench of fear, sweat, pain and human waste hit him, and he could see Tenten pale drastically. He motioned for her and Lee to hang back and watch their backs, and she couldn't hide the small look of relief. He flashed her a small smile in reply and kept going. His eyes flickered to Guy, who had his hands balled into tight enough fists that his hands were white. Niji had a look of disgust on his face, and Hiro had to force himself to take a deep breath to control his magic. Last thing they needed was for him to accidentally bring the fortress down on their heads in anger. He had to force his hand not to shake as he slipped the key into the lock and pushed the cell door open. The whispered lumos lit the small room up and immediately made Hiro wish for darkness again. "Kakashi." Hiro managed to get his vocal cords working, though only in a choked whisper. There was no answer and he looked at Niji, who nodded. He was alive. Hiro took a hesitant step into the cell and then dashed to his friend's side. He was reluctant to touch him in case he just made it worse, but he needed to get him uncurled if even only a little. "It's okay, Kakashi, we're here to take you home," he whispered soothingly and then put a hand on his shoulder. Kakashi convulsed slightly, pulling away and curling up even more if it was possible. "Kakashi, can you hear me? Do you know who I am?" he asked as he quickly ran a diagnostic spell and then pushed himself away from the injured man to empty his stomach. "Hiro?" Guy called in concern. "I'm okay. We need to get him out of here, but I need to get some potions into him first." Guy nodded and moved to help. Kakashi finally responded vocally, screaming as they tried to get him to straighten him out a bit. "Eternal rival, please, we are only trying to help." "I don't think he's aware of us," Hiro told the other man. They finally managed to roll him over enough to get a look at his face, and sure enough his eye was glazed and unfocused, not seeing them. Hiro gently held his head, still making eye contact. "You're going to be okay, Kakashi, we're taking you home," he said, staring into Kakashi's open eye even as the man fought against them weakly. He only hoped he was simply delirious from fever and hadn't been driven mad, considering how many times he had been exposed to the cruciatus curse. Pulling out the needed potions, Guy helped him get them into the injured man. They were all relieved when he finally went limp as the mild sleeping draft and pain relievers kicked in. Guy lifted the broken body gently and they quickly left the cell. They hurried back down the hall, picking Tenten and Lee up on the way, both teens sparing a horrified look at the copy nin as they ran. They all but flew down the stairs and back into the tunnel until they were outside. "I'll meet you back at the cottage, there's something I need to do first," Hiro stated flatly, but they could all hear the restrained rage in his voice. "Hiro?" "Oh?" he all but snarled, his magic snapping around him. Guy nodded and they portkeyed out. As soon as they were gone, he released his fraying hold on his magic, feeding his rage and pain into it and aiming it all at the fortress before him. As the fortress began to shake under the assault, he activated his own portkey, returning to the chaos of Muni's cottage. He took one step towards the kitchen and then slipped into the welcoming embrace of darkness, unaware of Niji catching him gently and carrying him to his sleeping bag. TBC. Chapter 15. Iruka paced the room nervously. He could feel Sakura and Remus watching him, but he didn't care. His cousin was risking his life to save his lover and there was nothing he could do but wait. He hated being the one always left behind to wait, but as a Chunin Academy teacher that was all he could do. He didn't take many missions and only during the academy holidays, and they were always fairly low ranked. Since replacing academy teachers was hard, very few people were suicidal enough to want to deal with classrooms of mini ninja. He'd done several A-rank missions before becoming a teacher and sometimes he wished he'd stuck with them instead. Maybe after this he would increase his training and resign from the academy, maybe. The room being used an infirmary was as ready as it was going to get, stocked with healing potions and supplies brought from Konoha. Which left the three of them with nothing to do but wait for the team to return, hopefully with Kakashi. He bolted outside as he heard Tenten yelling for help, only to freeze as he saw Kakashi's limp form in Guy's arms. He could have sworn his heart actually stopped beating for a second before he moved to help them get the Jounin inside and into Remus's room, since it was the largest bedroom. After that, all he could do was step back and watch as Sakura and Remus worked, occasionally handing them the things they needed. Taking a second to look around, he felt a flash of panic. "Where's Hiro?" he demanded, glaring as Guy and Niji exchanged a look. "Well," he snapped. "He stayed behind to do something. He said he'd be right behind us," Niji explained. "We need more water." Sakura snapped out and Niji left the room. Iruka followed a second later as he heard a muffled noise. He relaxed as he saw Niji lifting Hiro into his arms and carrying him over to his sleeping bag. Stepping forward, he opened the bag and held it while Niji made Hiro comfortable. "He's exhausted, stay with him," Niji told him and then went to get the water Sakura wanted. Iruka knelt beside his cousin, checking him over for any injuries, and was relieved to find none. He wanted to go back into the infirmary, but he knew he would only be in the way and someone should stay with Hiro just in case. "How is he?" Guy asked seriously. "Lucky to be alive," was Rimas's tired answer. Healing magic really wasn't his thing. Harry had more talent in the area than he did, but according to Niji, the teen was out cold. The werewolf collapsed into a worn armchair and gladly accepted the cup of tea Tenton handed him. "Frankly, I don't know how he survived long enough to be rescued with those injuries." His ribcage was all but pulverized, the bones in his legs shattered, not to mention the massive internal injuries. He also has wounds that match vampire fangs and werewolf claws. We'll have to wait and see whether or not he was infected, but so far it looks good. He was tortured extensively and exposed to several nasty dark curses, including the 2 non-lethal unforgivables. As for his mental state, we'll have to wait for him to regain consciousness before we'll know anything. But frankly, don't like the odds of him still being sane. Rimas finished sadly. The ninja stared at him in horror. "Poor Kakashi-sensei, with those injuries he'll never be able to work as a ninja again," Tenton whispered. That made Rimas smile slightly. "His legs are already 45% healed, his ribs will take longer but are on the mend. The internal injuries are also healing well," he told them, earning looks of shock. "How?" Niji demanded. "Magic. I removed the bones from his legs completely and they are currently regrowing. It's a painful procedure as Harry could tell you, but at least Kakashi is still unconscious. I do the same for his ribs, but it's too risky. Thanks to Sakura's abilities, he's no longer in danger of dying from internal bleeding, but he will be very sore for a while. But he'll live." Iruka finally spoke from where he was sitting beside the still sleeping Hiro. "Yes." This time Sakura answered, smiling softly at her old teacher. She wasn't blind, she knew there was more than friendship between her 2 teachers, but she also knew better than to say anything. Someone needs to stay with him at all times, in case he wakes or there are complications. "We should stay here until after the full moon, just to be safe as well." The group nodded in agreement, knowing Hiro wouldn't argue if he was awake and Tsunade had put him in charge. "I've given as many pain relief and sleeping potions I can risk safely so he won't wake for a while, maybe tomorrow afternoon," Rimas added. "Let Ruka watch him." Everyone jumped at the slurred voice and then looked down at the occupied sleeping bag. Bleary green eyes stared back before Harry pushed himself up into a sitting position, letting Iruka help him. Sakura ducked into the kitchen and returned with a large glass of water, which Harry downed gratefully. "Thanks. What did I miss?" "What did you do? Do you have any idea how far you drained your magical core?" Rimas growled. "Tommy boys down a rather large base, doubt anyone got out before it collapsed on them," Harry answered, earning a lot of disbelieving looks. Rimas started laughing. "You love shocking people by doing the impossible, don't you?" The last remaining marauder grinned. "Ought to maintain the reputation, Mooney. How is Kakashi?" Harry listened carefully as Rimas listed his injuries again, as well as what they'd done to heal him. He closed his eyes in pain, hands clenched into trembling fists. He opened his eyes again as Iruka's hand covered his. The older man gave him a shaky smile. "We got him out, Hiroshi. He will be okay, we have to believe that." The teen swallowed and nodded, leaning his head on his cousin's shoulder. He hated this, hated feeling so helpless. Sure, he'd taken out the fortress, but only because he had been so far beyond mad that his rage had fueled his magic beyond what he was normally capable of. And that would not help Kakashi or stop Voldemort. Vacation time was over, he'd been taking it too easy while in Konoha, but now he needed to train. Voldemort wouldn't stop until he ruled the world or someone stopped him. "Where's Moody?" Remus blinked at the sudden subject change and then shrugged. "No one's sure. When Dumbledore refused to step in after Fudge put the bounty on you, Moody, Tonks and Shacklebolt left the order and vanished. I only stayed to keep an eye on things, gather information." "Why? Think you can get word to them?" Harry asked, sitting up straight. "Harry?" Remus eyed him warily. "It's time we stopped playing around. Get them here. We have a few weeks for them and you to get me up to Aura standard at least." "No way, Cub." Remus stood in agitation. The ninja watched on, Iruka the only one with any idea of what might be going on, and even then he knew Hiro hadn't told him everything. "What other choice is there, Remus?" Riddle won't stop until someone stops him and I'm the only one who can. Harry said coldly, staring into Remus's amber eyes. He's always been afraid of Dumbledore and the Order. Harry cut him off, his voice barely above a whisper. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches, born to those who have thrice to fight him, born as the 7th month dies, and the Dark Lord will mark him as his equal, but he will have power, the Dark Lord knows not, and either must die at the hands of the other, for neither can live while the other survives. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord will be born as the 7th month dies. Remus went wide and collapsed back, Guy catching him before he could fall to the floor, although the werewolf didn't seem to notice, horrified eyes locked on Emerald one's. "No, please no, not you," he whispered in agony. Harry pushed himself to his feet and moved to kneel in front of the last marauder. "It's always been me, Moony. The day he killed my parents he set this in motion. There's nothing anyone can do to stop it. Either I kill him or he kills me, there is no choice." Remus moved, pulling Harry into his arms and holding him close. "Would someone mind explaining what you are talking about?" Niji asked, one eyebrow arched. "Nothing much, just the fate of the world," Harry answered flippantly. Remus closed his eyes in pain, sending a mental apology to his friends for not being able to protect Harry from what was to come. "I'll send word and start bringing the animagus potion, better to have someone who knows what they're doing supervising. How long can you stay?" "Tsunade gave us 2 months. Then we better get to work." "Moony. Marauders forever, cub. You'll need a new name, you know." Remus gave him a shaky smile and then stepped away from Guy's support. "I leave that to your wisdom, Mr. Moony. Guy-sensei, would you be willing to continue my training while here?" "Of course. I did promise my eternal rival I would train you in his absence." "Thanks." Harry went off in thought for a bit. Tenton was a weapon specialist and it would be good for the psychological impact if nothing else, and you'd care to help me break into one of the most secure places in the magical world. "Harry?" Remus looked at him, he had a bad feeling he knew where the teen was talking about. "The headmaster has something of mine and I need it back." The teen shrugged. "And that would be?" The werewolf prompted, making Harry grin. "The sword of Gryffindor." "What? That sword was lost centuries ago." "Actually it was in the sorting hat. Guess no one ever told you exactly how I killed the basilisk in 2nd year." "The basilisk? You kill it how?" "Shoved the sword up through its mouth and into the brain after Fox gouged its eyes out. Took a fang through the arm while doing it though, if Fox hadn't been there. He would have died. Phoenix tears are the only cure to basilisk venom." Remus finished quietly, the others listening intently since in reality they knew very little about the teen before he moved to Konoha, and what they did know was mostly a lie. "Saw Gryffindor's sword, you do realize that if you're seen wielding that, they'll be saying I'm his heir instead of Slytherin's like in 2nd year." "Yeah, I know. But Dumbledore said it took a true Gryffindor to pull it from the hat, not an heir," Harry explained. "So this sword belonged to someone important?" Tenton asked, curious. "Only one of the most famous and powerful wizards to live in the last several thousand years." Remus told her. "It is said that the sword itself holds some powers, though no one knows what. Well, it didn't show any while I was fighting the giant snake. So does anyone want to come with?" "Harry, you'll never get past the wards undetected. Unless I use the one entrance Dumbledore can't ward." Remus gulped slightly. "The chamber? Only a Parselmouth can use it, and last time I checked Riddle and I are the only ones around. Getting in is the easy part, it's getting into the headmaster's office that'll be hard, but I think I have a way." Iruka stared down at his sleeping lover, carefully running his fingers through the silver hair, hoping Kakashi was somehow where he was there. The bruises on his face were fading, and his legs were now 70% healed, and the rest of his injuries were healing thanks to magic and chakra. It was good to see he was healing physically, especially since normally wounds of that magnitude would have had him living out his life as a civilian. But what scared Iruka was the fact that Kakashi may not be all there mentally when he woke, which would be soon. He didn't know what he would do if what they had done had broken his lover. He would never leave the older man, but for Kakashi to return to Konoha like that, Iruka was not powerful enough to protect him from the assassins that others would send. The low groan of pain coming from the bed startled him from his thoughts, and he shifted so that he would be in Kakashi's line of sight, hoping that seeing him would help the other man. "It's okay, Kakashi, you're safe now. We got you out of there, they can't hurt you anymore." He soothed as Kakashi tried to move only to groan again in pain. "Don't move, love, you were badly hurt. Can you open your eyes?" Other than some feeble movement and more groaning, Kakashi didn't respond. Iruka continued to stroke his hair, hoping to soothe him, and then flared his chakra to get the other's attention. A second later Sakura ran through the door, Remus hot on her heels, although he wasn't looking too well with how close the full moon was. "Iruka-sensei? I think he's waking up," he explained, and the two moved to the bed to check his vitals. "Kakashi-sensei, can you hear me? Do you know who I am?" Sakura called softly while Remus ran a scan with his wand. Remus and Iruka moved quickly to hold him down as Kakashi began to thrash about, only causing himself more pain. Sensei, please, you'll hurt yourself. It's okay, you're safe now. It's me, Sakura, your student. The pink-haired teen tried to calm him, but it wasn't working. They all started a bit when Kakashi's eyes opened. Kakashi, can you understand me? Iruka asked softly. His heart plummeted when he saw no recognition in the glazed eyes. All three winced when the man began screaming, trying to fight against them. Remus summoned a potion and quickly poured it down his throat, Kakashi going limp instantly, even as the others appeared in the doorway, weapons drawn. All it took was a look at the room's occupants to realize what had happened. This doesn't mean anything. It could simply take his mind a while to realize he's safe. If that's the case, then he should be mostly okay. Remus pointed out. Neji followed Hiro through the forest. If he hadn't been in the forest of death, then this place would be a lot scarier. He had only volunteered for this for the chance to observe the older teen more and to learn more about his strange abilities and secrets. As much as the man often annoyed him, he knew his sensei would protect the others, and Iruka-sensei, while not as powerful as a Jounin, was certainly no slouch, so he felt safe leaving his teammates back at their base. He had been the obvious choice to accompany Hiro on this mission after all. Ai and Lee were not the best at stealth infiltration, they were not looking to engage in a fight, so weapons mistress was unnecessary. Sakura was needed to care for Kakashi, and sending family together was always a bad idea, so that ruled out Iruka-sensei. Plus, being able to see through walls would be useful from what Hiro had told him while they had been gearing up. Neji watched as Hiro paused, looking around obviously to make sure they were in the right spot. What I'm about to do you cannot tell anyone about, Tsunade classified it an S-rank secret, got it? Neji nodded and then jerked slightly in surprise as Hiro hissed at a nearby stone. He watched in surprise as the ground shifted, forming a tunnel which Hiro jogged down. Having no other option, Neji followed. Iruka lay next to Kakashi, his arms wrapped gently around him as he slept. Despite Remus's optimistic words, Iruka was finding himself giving into despair. What if the wizard was wrong and his Kakashi was gone, lost in his own mind forever? He shivered slightly, moving closer and holding him as best he could while taking his injuries into account. Unguent. Iruka sat up instantly at the pained sound. Had Kakashi actually spoken? Kakashi, can you hear me? It okay, I've got you, love. Iruka whispered, kissing his forehead gently. Nopal. Kakashi coughed harshly and then whimpered as his ribs protested violently. Iruka reached over for the cup and gently lifted Kakashi's head from the bed, placing the cup at his lips. Drink this for me, Kakashi, it's just water to help your throat. He tipped the cup slightly, but Kakashi kept his mouth shut. Not knowing what to do, Iruka began to hum softly. He couldn't sing to save his life, but he could at least carry a tune while humming. He hoped that it would break through somehow, that Kakashi would know it was him, since he was the only person who knew what the song meant to them. It was the song that had been playing on the radio their first anniversary, the song they had left playing when they had gone to his bedroom and made love for the first time. He continued humming softly, one hand supporting Kakashi's head, the other holding the cup to his lips. He smiled as Kakashi relaxed a little and his lips parted a small amount. Tipping the cup carefully, he let a few drops slip in. Kakashi swallowed automatically, and Iruka continued to help him drink that way until most of the water was gone. He lowered Kakashi back onto the pillows, softly stroking his face. He smiled as Kakashi's eyelids flickered and then opened slightly. It's okay, love, I'm here. Kakashi stared dazedly at him for a few seconds before his eyes slid shut again and he slipped into sleep. Neji scanned the corridors around them before signaling it was clear. Hiro nodded and then took the lead, heading confidently through the deserted hallways. It was obvious that Hiro knew this place very well, enough to be confident that they wouldn't trip any alarms. Neji was just glad to be out of those tunnels, they made his skin crawl, not that he'd admit it. After nearly half an hour of using the more out-of-the-way corridors and secret tunnels, they finally reached a dead end with an interesting statue. Here goes nothing. Hiro uttered before speaking softly in a language Neji didn't recognize. It wasn't what Remus spoke. Hiro grinned as the statue moved aside, revealing a revolving staircase. Neji checked above them and found an empty office. He nodded and they moved onto the staircase. Hiro pulled his wand and scanned the door before opening it and entering the office. Neji noticed the pained look on the older boy's face as he looked around before Hiro closed his eyes and took a deep breath. His eyes snapped open and he began a visual search for their target there. Sure enough, an elegant sword was resting on the wall above the desk. Hiro moved further into the room and suddenly the portraits noticed them. Well, look who's back. One taunted. Shut up. Hiro growled. You're not welcome here, boy. That's nice, I'm just here for what is mine. Hiro moved behind the desk and reached up to grasp the sword. The portraits began yelling at him, but he ignored them as he peeled the sword down. Hiro took one last look around the office before turning his attention to Niji. Let's get out of here. Niji nodded, he could see the pain in Hiro's eyes as they fled the castle, but he stayed silent, it wasn't his place to say anything. Iruka smiled when he saw Hiro curled up in the armchair. His trip must have been successful, though it was surprising he hadn't woken when the team came in, then again he was used to his cousin's presence now. He stretched and then turned to study Kakashi, he seemed to be sleeping easier now, which was good, he needed the sleep to heal. How is he? Iruka almost jumped at Hiro's whisper and the teen sent him a small smile. A bit better, I think. He talked a little in his sleep and I managed to get him to drink some water. He even woke up for a few seconds, but I don't know how where he was. Hiro nodded, stretching as he stood. I take it your trip was successful. Yep. Hiro moved over to the bed and rested his hand lightly on Kakashi's forehead, reaching out with his magic full moons tonight. Mooney's going to stay in the forest, but we'll have to move Kakashi to the secure room just in case. If he changes, what will it do to his healing? Iruka asked softly. Hiro looked down and Iruka nodded, understanding what his cousin couldn't say. The council will go ballistic if he. What about you? Iruka looked at him. How are you dealing with this? Hiro put a hand on his shoulder. I love him, no matter what I will stay with him. Iruka stated fiercely, making Hiro smile. He's lucky to have you. Most people wouldn't stay with a lover who's been attacked by a werewolf. Hiro said quietly. It doesn't matter to me, he's still Kakashi either way. Iruka answered and Hiro hugged him before moving away. I'm going to go keep Mooney company for a while. Iruka gripped Hiro's hand tightly as they stood outside the large cage Kakashi was laying in, watching as the light of the full moon moved ever closer to him. They were the only ones in the room, Iruka not wanting any of the others to see if he was trembling, and he knew it, but he couldn't stop. Remus had explained the transformation to him, and it was violent, something Kakashi's body may be too weak to deal with. He honestly didn't care if Kakashi was a werewolf as long as he survived. They both held their breath as the moonlight hit Kakashi, and they waited in dead silence for several minutes before Hiro relaxed and pulled Iruka into a hug. He didn't change Iruka. The teen grinned as he went to the cage door, unlocking it before moving inside and levitating Kakashi out and back to the bedroom. Iruka went to follow but found it hard as his legs buckled. Kakashi was still human. He wouldn't have to deal with being a werewolf. He looked up as someone caught him and found himself grinning up at Guy. He didn't change. Iruka whispered before his world went black. TBC. What if Naruto was an ancestor in Harry Potter? End here, and thanks for watching my video till the end.